Gideon Whitmore had been driving trucks for 17 years, and in all that time, he'd never once questioned what was in the back of his trailer. That was the first rule of commercial hauling. You don't ask, you don't look, you just deliver. The manifest said furniture. You hauled furniture. It said machine parts. You hauled machine parts. Simple as that. But on that cold October night, rolling through the empty stretch of I-40 between Memphis and Nashville, something made him break that rule. It started around midnight. Gideon had picked up the load earlier that evening from a warehouse on the outskirts of Memphis. The whole setup had felt off from the start. The facility was tucked behind an industrial complex. No signage, just a rusted gate and a single floodlight casting long shadows across cracked asphalt. The loading crew had been 3 men who barely spoke English, and the dispatcher who signed the paperwork, a woman named Temperance Blackwood, had kept her eyes down the entire time, like she was afraid to look at him directly. Everything sealed tight? Gideon had asked, doing his usual walk-around inspection of the trailer. "Yes, sir, Mr. Whitmore," Temperance had replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please don't stop until you reach the destination. Mr. Fairweather will be waiting." Amos Fairweather. The name on the delivery receipt. Address listed as a distribution center just outside Nashville, arrival time set for 3 a.m. sharp. Not unusual for overnight deliveries, but something about the way Temperance had said his name made Gideon's skin crawl. The manifest listed the cargo as industrial refrigeration units, 24 of them, supposedly. The weight seemed right. The trailer pulled heavy like it should with that kind of load. But refrigeration units didn't explain why they'd loaded the trailer in complete darkness, using only the thin beams of their headlamps. It didn't explain why the men had worn thick gloves despite the mild evening temperature. And it definitely didn't explain why Temperance had handed him an envelope with an extra $500 in cash for the inconvenience of the late hour. Gideon had taken the money. Bills were bills, and his daughter needed braces. Now, 2 hours into the drive, he was starting to regret that decision. The first sound came just as he passed mile marker 173. A soft thump from somewhere behind him, muffled by the trailer walls but distinct enough to make him glance at his side mirrors. Nothing visible in the darkness. Probably just the load shifting, he told himself. Happened all the time when cargo wasn't properly secured. Then it came again. Thump. Pause. Thump, pause, thump. Too rhythmic to be random shifting. Too deliberate. Gideon reached over and turned down the radio. An old country station that barely came through in this stretch of highway. In the sudden quiet, he could hear his engine humming, his tires singing against the asphalt. And underneath it all, something else. Scratching, like fingernails on metal coming from the trailer. His hands tightened on the wheel. The highway stretched empty ahead of him. Not another vehicle in sight. The nearest rest stop was 20 miles behind him, the next one 30 miles ahead. He was alone out here with whatever was making those sounds. The scratching stopped. For 5 whole minutes, nothing but normal road noise. Gideon had almost convinced himself he'd imagined it when a new sound froze his blood. A voice, muffled but unmistakably human, calling out from inside the trailer. "Help! Somebody help me!" Gideon's foot came off the gas instinctively. The speedometer dropped from 70 to 60, then 50. His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe someone had gotten locked in during loading. Maybe one of those workers had climbed in to secure something and gotten trapped when they sealed the doors. But Temperance's words echoed in his memory. "Please don't stop until you reach the destination." The voice came again, louder this time. "Please, I can't breathe. Let me out." Multiple voices now. Men, women, maybe even children. All pleading, crying, begging from inside what was supposed to be a trailer full of refrigeration units. Gideon's truck drifted towards the shoulder as his concentration shattered. He jerked the wheel back, keeping the rig on the road, but his whole body was trembling now. This wasn't right. This wasn't just against regulations. This was something else entirely. He grabbed his CB radio with a shaking hand, ready to call for help, then stopped. Call who? The state police? And tell them what? That he was hauling human cargo? They'd arrest him first, ask questions later. He'd lose his commercial license, go to prison probably. His daughter would grow up without a father, but the voices kept coming, more desperate now. Water, please, just water. My baby. Where's my baby? Can't feel my legs anymore. The sounds were coming from different parts of the trailer, like people were spread throughout the cargo space. How many were back there? 10? 20? More? Gideon looked at his phone mounted on the dashboard. No signal out here. These hills killed cell coverage for miles in every direction. Even if he wanted to call someone, he couldn't. A loud bang echoed from the trailer, metal on metal, like someone had found something heavy and was using it to try to break through the walls. Then another, then multiple impacts, a chaotic drumming that made the whole rig vibrate. The speedometer read 45 now. Gideon hadn't realized he was still slowing down. He thought about Temperance Blackwood's nervous eyes, the way she'd kept glancing at the warehouse doors like something might come through them at any moment. He thought about those men in their thick gloves, moving in practiced silence. He thought about Amos Fairweather, waiting at 3 a.m. sharp at a distribution center that probably wasn't a distribution center at all. And he thought about his 17-year-old daughter, Sarah, asleep in her bed back home, trusting that her father would come back from another routine run. The banging from the trailer grew more frantic. Someone was screaming now, the sound penetrating even through the insulated walls. Not screaming words anymore, just raw animal panic. Gideon's eyes darted to his mirrors. Still no traffic, but he could see the shoulder widening ahead. An old way station, closed for years, but still with enough room to pull over safely. His foot hovered between the gas and the brake. $500 extra. That's what his conscience was worth. $500 to not ask questions, to not look, to just deliver like always. Help us! The voice was clear this time, close to the front of the trailer, right behind his cab. He's dying. Someone's dying in here. That decided it. Gideon hit his turn signal, useless gesture on an empty highway, and began easing toward the abandoned way station. Whatever consequences came from this, he'd deal with them. He couldn't drive another mile listening to those voices. The truck rumbled onto the cracked concrete of the old station, headlights sweeping across broken windows and rusted scales. Gideon set the parking brake but left the engine running. His hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to unbuckle his seatbelt. He climbed down from the cab, legs unsteady beneath him. The October air bit at his face, carrying the smell of dead leaves and distant rain. The trailer loomed behind him, 48 feet of metal that suddenly seemed alien and threatening. The voices had gone quiet, completely quiet, as if everyone inside had heard the truck stop and was holding their breath, waiting. Gideon walked slowly toward the back of the trailer, his footsteps echoing in the empty way station. His flashlight beam bobbed with each step, creating dancing shadows on the corrugated metal walls. The seal on the door was intact, a metal band with a numbered lock that would have to be cut to open. He had bolt cutters in his toolbox. He always did, for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency, didn't it? As he reached for the seal, something made him pause. The silence from inside the trailer was absolute now. No breathing, no whispers, no shifting of bodies. Just dead, empty silence. like nothing had ever been in there at all, or like everything in there was waiting. Gideon's hand hesitated on the seal. Every instinct he'd developed in 17 years of trucking screamed at him to get back in the cab and drive away. Deliver the load, collect the payment, go home to his daughter. But he couldn't unhear those voices, couldn't unknow what he now knew. He gripped the seal tighter, ready to get the bolt cutters when his phone suddenly blazed to life on the dashboard. Impossible, there was no signal here. The screen lit up with an incoming call. The caller ID read, Temperance Blackwood. At 12:47 a.m., on an empty highway in the middle of nowhere, the woman who'd loaded his trailer was calling him. Gideon looked from the phone to the sealed trailer doors, then back to the phone. It continued to ring, the sound carrying through the quiet night like an accusation. On the fourth ring, against every better judgment, he walked back to the cab and answered it. Mr. Whitmore. Temperance's voice was different now. Calm, cold. Nothing like the nervous woman from the warehouse. I need you to listen very carefully. What's in my trailer? Gideon's voice came out as a growl. What you think is in your trailer and what's actually in your trailer are two very different things, Mr. Whitmore. I need you to get back on the road immediately. There are people back there. I heard them. A pause, then, no, you didn't. I know what I heard. You heard what it wanted you to hear, Mr. Whitmore. I'm begging you. Do not open that trailer. Do not stop again. Drive straight to Mr. Fairweather. He's the only one who can handle what you're carrying. What am I carrying? Another pause, longer this time. When Temperance spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Something that should have stayed buried. Something that learns. Something that knows exactly what to say to make you open those doors. It's been listening to people for a very long time, Mr. Whitmore. It knows what voices to use. Gideon's blood turned to ice water. You're insane. 3 drivers before you. That's how many we've lost trying to transport it. 3 drivers who stopped, who opened their trailers, who believed what they heard. We found their trucks. Never found them. Then why? Because it has to be moved. Because where it was, it can't stay there anymore. Too many people were starting to notice. Mr. Fairweather has a facility, proper containment, but it has to get there first. As if in response, the banging started again from the trailer, louder than before. The whole rig shook with the impacts. But now that Gideon was listening differently, he noticed something. The pattern was wrong. It wasn't the chaotic desperation of trapped people. It was methodical, rhythmic, testing, looking for weak points. It knows you've stopped, Temperance said urgently. It knows you're thinking about it. The longer you stay there, the stronger it gets, the more it can pull from your mind. Your daughter, Mr. Whitmore, Sarah, isn't it? Don't let it learn about Sarah. Gideon's heart stopped. How do you know my daughter's name? We screen our drivers carefully. We know everything. We have to. Now please, get back on the road. Drive to Mr. Fairweather. Let him handle this. Go home to your daughter. Forget this night ever happened. The banging stopped. Then, clear as if someone was standing right beside him, Gideon heard his daughter's voice from the trailer. Daddy? Daddy, why did you leave me here? It's so dark. His phone slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering on the floor of the cab. That was Sarah's voice. Not similar to it. It was her voice, down to the slight lisp she still had from her braces. Daddy, please. I'm scared. But Sarah was home, safe in bed, 40 miles away. Wasn't she? What if what if someone had taken her? What if while he was loading the trailer? That's not her. He said it out loud, needing to hear his own voice. "That's not my daughter." The voice changed, became older, familiar in a different way. "Gideon? Gideon, baby, it's Mom. They told me you were coming. They said you'd let me out." His mother, dead 3 years from cancer. Her voice exactly as he remembered it from those final days in hospice. Weak, but still carrying that Tennessee accent she'd never lost. "I've been waiting so long, baby. Just open the door." Gideon slammed the truck into gear, tires screaming against concrete as he gunned it back onto the highway. The phone tumbled around on the floor, Temperance's voice still coming through tinny and distant. But he couldn't hear her over the sound of his mother calling his name from the trailer, over the sound of his daughter crying, over the sound of dozens of other voices he didn't recognize, all pleading and screaming and begging. Mile marker 174, 175, 176. The voices grew more creative, more specific. "Gideon Whitmore. This is Officer Davidson with Tennessee State Police. We have you surrounded. Pull over immediately. Mr. Whitmore, this is St. Mary's Hospital. There's been an accident. Your daughter needs you. Hey, buddy, your trailer door's open. You're gonna lose your load." Each voice perfectly crafted, each one designed to make him stop. But Gideon kept driving, white-knuckled on the wheel, eyes locked on the road ahead. Nashville was still an hour away, 60 miles of empty highway with that thing in his trailer, learning his fears, his loves, his weaknesses with every passing second. The radio crackled to life without him touching it. "Breaker, breaker, this is Nighthawk southbound on 40. Got a silver Peterbilt weaving all over the road near mile 180. Driver looks like he's having some kind of episode." Gideon checked his mirrors. No headlights behind him. He was alone on the road. "Copy that, Nighthawk," another voice responded. "I'm about 5 miles behind him. Man looks possessed. Should we call it in?" They were describing him, but there were no other trucks. The voices were coming from inside his own radio. He reached over and yanked the CB cord from its socket. The voices continued, now coming from the trailer itself. Dozens of truckers discussing the crazy driver in the silver Peterbilt, describing things he hadn't done yet, turns he hadn't taken, exits he hadn't passed, describing the moment he'd finally break and open the doors. Mile marker 185. Gideon's hands had gone numb from gripping the wheel. The voices from the trailer had shifted tactics. No more pleading or crying. Now they were just talking, having conversations like he was hauling a load of people going about their normal lives. "Did you see the game last night? Mom said we could stop for ice cream after church. The mortgage payment is due Tuesday." Mundane, ordinary. The kind of background chatter you'd hear in a restaurant or a waiting room. It was almost worse than the screaming. At least the screaming made sense if something was trying to trick him. This casual normalcy made him question his own sanity. His phone, still on the floor, lit up again. This time it was a text from his daughter. "Dad, where are you? There's someone at the door. They said they're here to pick something up." Gideon nearly swerved off the road. He knew it wasn't real. Sarah didn't text like that. She used abbreviations, emojis, the linguistic shortcuts of her generation. This message was too formal, too proper, but the doubt crept in anyway. Another text. "Dad, they're getting angry. They said you have something that belongs to them." Then another. "They're coming inside." He couldn't reach the phone while driving. Couldn't call to check. Couldn't do anything but keep his eyes on the white lines and pray that when this was over, his real daughter would still be safe in her real bed. Mile marker 190. The exit for Burning Creek Road. Gideon knew this stretch well. There was a 24-hour diner about 2 miles off the highway, always full of truckers and night shift workers. People, witnesses, help. His turn signal clicked on before he realized he'd activated it. No, he had to stay on the highway, had to reach Amos Fairweather, had to... The wheel turned itself. Not metaphorically. Gideon felt it twist in his hands, the power steering fighting against his grip, forcing the truck toward the exit ramp. He yanked it back, muscles straining, but it was like arm wrestling a machine. The truck drifted right, tires bumping against the rumble strip. "Let go, Gideon." The voice came from everywhere at once. The radio, the air vents, vibrating through the seat itself. "You're so tired. You've been driving for so long. Just let go." He pulled harder, biceps screaming, and managed to force the truck back into the lane. The wheel stopped fighting him, but he could feel it waiting, testing his grip, looking for the moment his concentration slipped. Something slammed into the back of the trailer from inside, hard enough that he felt the whole rig lurch forward. The speed increased without him touching the gas. 75, 80, 85. The engine whined in protest. "Stop fighting us, Gideon." This voice was different, older, authoritative. "We've been patient, we've tried to explain, but if you won't stop the truck, we'll stop it for you." The engine sputtered, caught. Sputtered again. The check engine light blazed on the dashboard, followed by half a dozen other warnings. Oil pressure, temperature, battery. The speedometer began dropping. 80, 75, 70. "That's it," the voice soothed. "Just let it happen. Coast to a stop. We'll take care of everything." Gideon pumped the gas. Nothing. The pedal went all the way to the floor with no resistance, like the cable had been cut. The truck continued to slow, momentum bleeding away. At this rate, he'd be stopped within a mile. Sitting dead on the highway with that thing in his trailer, with no way to run, no way to call for help. He reached for the gear shift, ready to downshift and try to engine brake his way to more speed, when he remembered something from his early days of driving. An old trucker named Pete had taught him about the emergency override, a mechanical backup that bypassed the computer systems. It would destroy the engine running it too hard, but it would give him power. The switch was under the dashboard, hidden behind a panel that wasn't supposed to be removed. Gideon had never used it. Had hoped he'd never need to. 50 miles per hour. 45. He yanked the panel free, feeling blindly for the switch. His fingers found it just as the speedometer hit 40. The engine roared back to life, not healthy but alive, screaming in mechanical agony but responding to the gas pedal again. Black smoke poured from the exhaust stacks. The temperature gauge immediately redlined. He had minutes, maybe less, before the engine seized completely. Mile marker 195. Nashville was still 40 miles away. The radio exploded with static, then voices. Hundreds of them, all talking at once, overlapping into a white noise of human speech. Through it all, he could pick out individual words. Stop. Open. Release. Free. Hungry. That last word repeated more than the others. Hungry. 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 The trailer began to rock side to side, rhythmic and violent, trying to jackknife the rig. Gideon fought to control it, but the steering was sluggish, the engine coughing and missing. He could smell burning oil, hot metal, the acidic stench of an engine eating itself alive. Mile marker 200, 35 miles to go. The hood burst open, caught by the wind, and slammed against the windshield. The glass spider-webbed but didn't shatter. Gideon couldn't see the road ahead, only glimpses through the cracks. He rolled down his window, stuck his head out into the cold night air, driving half-blind at 70 miles per hour. The voices from the trailer had gone quiet again. Somehow, that was worse. Then he saw the lights ahead, red and blue. Police. A roadblock across the highway, 3 cars positioned to force traffic to stop. Gideon's heart sank. He'd have to stop, have to explain. And the moment he stopped, that thing would... As he got closer, something felt wrong about the roadblock. The police cars were positioned oddly, at angles that didn't make tactical sense. The lights were flashing, but there was no rhythm to them, just chaotic blinking. And there were no officers visible, no one directing traffic. 200 yards. 100. The police cars were empty. Not just empty, abandoned. Doors hanging open. Light bars still flashing but covered in what looked like rust or something organic. Something that had grown over them. 50 yards. The cars weren't even real police vehicles, they were old civilian cars with magnetic light bars stuck on top. Props. Fakes. An illusion. Gideon aimed for the gap between 2 of them and floored it. The engine gave one last heroic surge of power. He clipped the rear bumper of one fake cop car, sending it spinning, and burst through onto clear highway. The engine died immediately after. Complete seizure. No warning, no gradual decline, just instant mechanical death. But momentum carried him forward, coasting now. The only sound the whisper of tires on asphalt and the hammering of his own heartbeat. Mile marker 205, 30 miles to Nashville. Coasting at 60 and dropping. That's when he saw the real vehicles ahead. A convoy of black SUVs, unmarked but official-looking, blocking the highway in a much more professional formation. Men in tactical gear were already out, weapons not quite pointed at him but held ready. Behind them, standing beside an armored truck, was a tall man in a wool coat despite the October warmth. Even from a distance, Gideon could see his unusual height, the way he stood perfectly still while everyone else moved around him. Amos Fairweather had to be. Gideon let the truck coast to a stop, air brakes hissing. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely set the parking brake. In the sudden silence, he could hear his own ragged breathing and nothing else. The trailer had gone completely quiet. Fairweather approached slowly, flanked by 2 men in hazmat suits. He was even taller up close, maybe 6'6", with premature white hair and eyes so pale they looked almost colorless. When he spoke, his voice was calm, cultured, with a hint of an accent Gideon couldn't place. "Mr. Whitmore, you made it. I'm genuinely impressed." "What?" Gideon's voice cracked. He swallowed and tried again. "What's in my trailer?" Fairweather studied him for a moment. The easier question would be, what isn't in your trailer? It's been collecting things for a very long time. Voices, memories, pieces of everyone who's ever been near it. It's quite good at reassembling those pieces into something convincing. Is it... Gideon struggled for the right word. Alive? That depends on your definition of alive. It thinks, it wants, it definitely hungers. Whether that qualifies as life is a philosophical question I'll leave to others. Fairweather gestured to his team. "We'll take it from here. Your part is done." The other drivers. Temperance said there were 3 before me. 2 opened their trailers. We found their trucks, but not them. The 3rd... Fairweather paused. The 3rd made it 20 miles from the pickup point before driving off a bridge. We think he did it on purpose, to stop it from getting where it wanted to go. Where did it want to go? Population centers, cities, places with lots of voices to collect. Fairweather pulled out an envelope, thick with cash. Your payment, plus a substantial bonus for successful delivery. Gideon didn't reach for it. What happens to it now? Containment, study, eventually, hopefully, understanding. There are more things like this in the world than you'd think, Mr. Whitmore. Old things, hungry things. Things that have learned to hide in plain sight. My job is to keep them from the rest of you. One of the hazmat-suited men approached. "Sir, we're ready to transfer." Fairweather nodded, then turned back to Gideon. "There's a car waiting to take you home. I'd recommend you forget this night. Tell yourself it was a hallucination, a bad dream, whatever helps you sleep. Your daughter is safe, by the way. We've had someone watching your house all night, just in case." "In case of what?" "In case it learned enough about you to send something else there. It can't create physical forms, not yet, but it can influence things, call things, draw certain elements to locations it knows about." Fairweather's pale eyes narrowed slightly. "You didn't open the trailer. You didn't even look through the door seals. That shows remarkable restraint." "I wanted to. God help me, I almost did." "But you didn't, that's what matters." Fairweather handed him the envelope. "Take the money, Mr. Whitmore. Go home. Hug your daughter. And next time someone offers you extra cash for a night run with special instructions, perhaps consider declining." Gideon took the envelope, his fingers numb against the paper. The voices. Were any of them real? Were there actually people in there at some point? Fairweather was quiet for a long moment. Then, the first voice it ever collected was from 1876. A railroad worker who found it buried in a mountain they were tunneling through. So, yes, Mr. Whitmore, the voices were real. Every one of them, just not current. As Gideon walked toward the waiting car, he could hear the team working on the trailer. The whir of special equipment, the crackle of radios. He didn't look back, but just before he got in the car, he heard something that made his blood freeze one last time. From somewhere inside that trailer, muffled but unmistakable, came the sound of his own voice. "What's in my trailer?" Then Temperance's voice. "What you think is in your trailer and what's actually in your trailer are two very different things." Then his voice again. "There are people back there. I heard them." It had recorded everything, every word, from the moment he'd picked up the load. It was learning his voice, adding it to its collection. The driver, a young man in a black suit, noticed his expression. "It does that, sir. Records everything near it, but don't worry. Mr. Fairweather's containment protocols are very thorough. It won't be using your voice again." "How can you be sure?" The driver started the engine. "Because in about 10 minutes, that thing will be buried under enough concrete and lead to build a small office building. And the only sound it'll be hearing for the next 100 years is its own echo." As they pulled away, Gideon saw the team loading a massive metal container onto the armored truck. The container was covered in symbols he didn't recognize, patterns that hurt to look at directly. Whatever was in his trailer, whatever had learned his daughter's name, his mother's voice, his deepest fears, was going into that box. He hoped it would be enough. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the road. The driver didn't speak, didn't even play the radio. Gideon dozed fitfully, jerking awake every time they hit a bump, expecting to hear voices from the back seat. When they pulled up to his house just as dawn was breaking, Sarah was in the kitchen making breakfast, earbuds in, dancing slightly to whatever she was listening to. Safe, unaware, normal. Gideon stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her, letting the reality of her presence wash over him. She noticed him and pulled out an earbud. "Dad, you're early. Rough night?" "You could say that." She studied his face. "You look terrible. Go shower, and I'll make you some eggs." "Sarah, yeah? I love you, kiddo." She rolled her eyes in that teenage way, but smiled. "Love you too, Dad. Now go shower. You smell like burnt rubber." He did smell like burnt rubber, and oil, and fear sweat. and something else, something he couldn't identify but that made his skin crawl. He stood under the hot water for 30 minutes, until his skin was red and raw, trying to wash away the memory of those voices. But that night, and for many nights after, he'd wake up thinking he heard something from outside. A familiar scratching, a muffled voice, the sound of someone testing the locks on his doors. He never looked, never checked, just pulled the pillow over his head and waited for dawn. Because he knew, deep in his bones, that some things should never be let in, no matter how familiar they sound. 3 weeks passed before Gideon took another job. He'd spent those weeks doing exactly what Amos Fairweather had suggested, telling himself it had been a hallucination, exhaustion, maybe carbon monoxide poisoning from a bad exhaust leak. The mind could play tricks on a tired driver. Everyone knew that. Highway hypnosis was a real thing. So were auditory hallucinations when you'd been running on caffeine and no sleep for too long. The money, though, the money was real. $20,000 in cash, far more than any single run should have paid. He'd used it to pay off Sarah's braces in full, put the rest in her college fund. Blood money, maybe, but it would buy his daughter a future. He was just starting to believe his own rationalization when Temperance Blackwood called. "Mr. Whitmore." Her voice was exactly as he remembered it from that night. Nervous, hesitant, like she was afraid of her own phone. "I need to ask you something. I don't work for you anymore. I know, that's not why I'm calling. I need to know. In the days after your delivery, did you notice anything unusual?" Gideon's hand tightened on the phone. Define unusual. Missing time? Items in your house moved. Your daughter mentioning conversations she doesn't remember having. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What are you talking about?" "Mr. Fairweather's containment. It worked. The primary entity is secured, but we think something else came through during transport. Something smaller, a fragment maybe, or something it called while it was in your trailer. We've had reports from 3 locations along your route. Small disturbances. Voices in empty rooms. And they all seem to be moving in one direction. Which direction?" There was a long pause, then, "Toward your house, Mr. Whitmore." Gideon stood up so fast his chair fell over. Sarah was upstairs, music thumping through her closed door. Safe. Normal. But for how long? "When?" he asked. "Based on the pattern of incidents. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, soon. What do I do?" "Leave. Take your daughter and leave. Go to a motel. Stay with friends. Just don't be there when it arrives." "And then what? We just keep running forever?" "No. Mr. Fairweather has a team. They'll handle it. But they need you gone so they can work without complications." Gideon was already moving, grabbing his keys, his wallet. "Sarah," he called up the stairs, "pack a bag. We're going to Aunt Linda's." "What? Dad, I have school tomorrow." "Now, Sarah." Something in his voice must have conveyed the urgency because he heard her door open immediately. "Dad, what's wrong?" He bounded up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. "I'll explain in the car. Just grab enough clothes for a few days." She stood in her doorway, concern creasing her face. "Is someone dead? Is it Aunt Linda?" "No, everyone's fine. We just need to go. Please, kiddo, trust me." She studied him for a moment, then nodded and disappeared into her room. Gideon went to his own room, threw clothes into a duffel bag without looking at what he was grabbing. His hands were shaking again, just like that night on the highway. They were in the truck and backing out of the driveway within 10 minutes. Sarah sat quietly in the passenger seat, bag at her feet, watching him with worried eyes. "Dad, you're scaring me." "I know. I'm sorry. He struggled for words that wouldn't sound insane. "There's been some threats related to a job I did." The police think it's better if we're not home for a few days. It was mostly true. Close enough. They were 5 miles from home when Sarah's phone rang. She looked at the screen, confused. It's our house number. Gideon's blood turned to ice. Don't answer it. But what if... Don't answer it, Sarah. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again, same number. Turn it off, Gideon said. Dad, turn it off. She powered down the phone, now looking genuinely frightened. Dad, what's going on? Really? Before he could answer, his own phone rang. He glanced at the display on the dashboard, their home number. He rejected the call. It rang again immediately. He turned off the Bluetooth, pulled his phone from his pocket, and powered it down completely. They drove in silence for several minutes before Sarah spoke again. Was it something illegal? The job? No, not illegal, just... He searched for words. Complicated, dangerous. I didn't know how dangerous until after. Is someone trying to hurt us? Something, not someone, something. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then, like what? I don't know exactly. But Mr. Fairweather, the man who hired me, he's going to take care of it. We just need to stay away until he does. They pulled into a gas station to fill up before the longer drive to Linda's. While Gideon pumped gas, Sarah went inside to use the bathroom. She was gone for less than 3 minutes. But when she came back, something was different about her expression. Vacant, distant. You okay? He asked as she climbed back into the truck. She turned to look at him, and for just a moment her eyes seemed wrong, too focused, too knowing. I'm fine, Daddy, she said. Daddy. She hadn't called him that in 3 years, not since she'd decided she was too old for such childish terms. Gideon's hand hesitated on the gear shift. Sarah? She smiled. It was Sarah's smile, but there was something else underneath it. Something watching from behind her eyes. We should go home, she said. I forgot my science project. It's due tomorrow. We're not going home. But I need it, Mrs. Anderson will fail me if I don't turn it in. Her voice was perfect. Every inflection, every teenage note of complaint. But the words were wrong. Sarah didn't have Mrs. Anderson this year. She'd had her as a freshman 2 years ago. Sarah, Gideon said slowly, what's your science teacher's name? That vacant look flickered across her face again. Mrs. Anderson. What's your best friend's name? Jessica. Sarah's best friend was named Mika, had been since elementary school. Gideon reached for his door handle, moving slowly, trying not to alarm whatever was wearing his daughter's face. Kiddo, why don't we go back inside? Get some snacks for the road. I'm not hungry. We should go home. In a minute. I need to use the bathroom first. He got out of the truck, walked around to her side, opened her door. She sat there, staring straight ahead, that not-quite-right smile still on her face. Come on, he said, holding out his hand. She took it. Her skin was ice cold. They walked into the gas station together. The clerk, a bored-looking kid maybe 20 years old, glanced up from his phone. Gideon caught his eye, tried to convey urgency without speaking. Can I help you? The clerk asked. Yeah, Gideon said. My daughter's not feeling well. Can she sit in your break room for a minute? We don't really have... Gideon pulled out his wallet, slapped $200 bills on the counter. Please, just for a few minutes, and I need to use your phone. The clerk looked at the money, then at Sarah, who was standing perfectly still, smiling that empty smile. Something in her expression must have disturbed him because he quickly pocketed the cash and pointed to a door marked Employees Only. Through there, phones on the wall. Gideon guided Sarah into the break room, a cramped space with a card table and a microwave that had seen better days. She sat down without being asked, hands folded in her lap, still smiling. He dialed Temperance's number from memory. She answered on the first ring. "Mr. Whitmore?" "It's in her," he said without preamble. "It's in my daughter. Where are you?" He gave her the address of the gas station. It happened when she went to the bathroom, 3 minutes, maybe less. When she came back, she was different. Is she responsive? Yes, but it's not her. It knows things, but not the right things, like it's accessing memories, but can't tell which ones are current. Don't let her out of your sight. Mr. Fairweather's team is 40 minutes away. Can you keep her contained that long? Contained? She's my daughter. Right now, she's a vessel. The thing inside her will try to get to familiar ground. It needs anchors, places it knows, to maintain its hold. If it gets back to your house, it'll be permanent, Gideon finished. We don't know that for certain, but that's the working theory. Keep her there. Keep her calm. Don't let her leave. Gideon hung up and turned back to Sarah. She was standing right behind him, close enough that he hadn't heard her move. "Who were you talking to, Daddy?" "Just a friend, letting them know we'll be late. We should go home. I don't feel good." "I know, kiddo. We'll go home soon. Promise?" He looked into his daughter's eyes, searching for any sign of the real Sarah underneath whatever was controlling her. For just a second, he thought he saw something. A flicker of fear, of confusion, like someone drowning just below the surface. "Sarah?" he whispered. "Sarah, if you can hear me, I'm going to get you out. I promise." The thing wearing her face tilted its head. "I am Sarah. Why are you being weird? What's your middle name?" "Anne." It was Anne. That was correct. But the way she said it, like she was reading it from a card, made his skin crawl. "When's your birthday?" "March 15th. Also correct." "What did you get for your birthday last year?" That vacant look again. "A bike?" She'd gotten concert tickets, her favorite band. She'd screamed so loud the neighbors complained. The thing was learning, pulling information from Sarah's memories, but it couldn't differentiate between old and new, important and trivial. It was like someone flipping through a photo album in the dark, only catching glimpses. "Sarah," he said, taking her hands. They were even colder now, like holding bags of ice. "I need you to fight. I need you to push it out." "Push what out?" "Daddy, you're hurting me." He wasn't squeezing that hard, but he loosened his grip anyway. "The thing inside you. The thing that isn't you," she laughed. It wasn't Sarah's laugh. It was older, deeper, amused in a way that made his stomach turn. "There is no thing," she said in that wrong voice. "There is only the collected, the gathered, the preserved. Your daughter is here, Gideon Whitmore. Every memory, every thought, every fear. I'm keeping her safe, just like I kept all the others safe. The voices in the trailer. Yes, all safe, all preserved, all part of the collection now." The thing smiled with Sarah's face. "She has such interesting memories of you. The time you forgot her recital. The time you made her mother cry. The time you chose the road over her. Stop. She forgives you, you know. But she wonders sometimes if you love the highway more than her. If you'd even notice if she disappeared. Stop. I could take her with me. Add her to the collection permanently. She'd never be alone again. Never be abandoned. Would that be so bad?" The door chimed as someone entered the gas station. Multiple footsteps, heavy and purposeful. Gideon glanced through the break room doorway and saw Amos Fairweather, tall and imposing in his wool coat despite the warm evening. 2 other men flanked him, carrying cases that looked medical. Fairweather met Gideon's eyes and nodded once, then approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "Hello, Sarah," he said in that cultured voice. "My name is Amos. I'm here to help." The thing wearing Sarah's face turned to look at him. "I know who you are. You're the keeper, the jailer, the one who buries us." "I prefer to think of myself as a curator," Fairweather said mildly. "And you've taken something that doesn't belong to you." She came to me, walked right into my embrace. That makes her mine. "No," Fairweather said. "It makes her occupied. There's a difference. And you're going to leave now. Or what? You'll bury me in concrete again? Seal me in lead? I'm not in a box anymore, curator. I'm in flesh. Warm, living flesh. Harm me, and you harm her." Fairweather pulled something from his pocket. A small silver tuning fork. He struck it against the wall, and it produced a clear, pure note that seemed to go on far longer than it should have. Sarah's body convulsed. She gasped, eyes rolling back, and for a moment Gideon saw two overlapping images, his daughter and something else, something that hurt to perceive directly, like looking at a shape that existed in too many dimensions at once. "That's uncomfortable, isn't it?" Fairweather said, conversationally. "The frequency disrupts your cohesion, makes it hard to maintain the connection. I can do this all day, can you?" The thing snarled with Sarah's voice. "You'll damage her mind." "Possibly, but she'll be alive and herself. That's more than the others got, isn't it? The ones you consumed completely. They wanted to join, they opened the door. This child didn't open any door. You forced your way in. That changes the rules." Fairweather struck the tuning fork again. Sarah's body convulsed harder this time. She fell to her knees, and when she looked up, Gideon saw his daughter's eyes, really saw them, full of terror and confusion. "Dad?" Her voice was small, lost. "Dad, what's happening? Why can't I move?" "It's okay, baby. We're going to get it out." Her face contorted, and the other voice returned. "You can't. I'm woven through her now. Every neuron, every memory. Pull me out, and you'll take half of her with me." Fairweather knelt down, bringing himself to Sarah's eye level. "That's what you said about the others. But you're lying. You're just a parasite, and parasites can always be removed if one knows the proper technique." He nodded to his men, who opened their cases and began pulling out equipment Gideon didn't recognize. Crystalline rods, copper wire twisted into impossible shapes, bottles of something that seemed to glow with its own light. "This is going to be unpleasant," Fairweather told Gideon. "You might want to step outside." "I'm not leaving her." "Very well, but don't interfere, no matter what you see or hear. The extraction process can be disturbing." The men began arranging the equipment in a circle around Sarah, who sat frozen in the center. Two voices now arguing from her mouth. Her own, frightened and confused, and the other, ancient and angry. The extraction began with light. The crystalline rods the men had placed around Sarah began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, until they cast harsh shadows on the break room walls. The light wasn't white or yellow, but something in between, a color that made Gideon's eyes water to look at directly. Sarah's body went rigid, back arching, mouth open in a silent scream. Then the scream became audible, two voices, overlapping, harmonizing in a way that no single throat should have been able to produce. "It hurts!" That was Sarah, terrified and confused. "You're killing us!" That was the other thing, desperate now, its earlier confidence evaporating. Fairweather remained calm, adjusting something on one of the devices, a box covered in dials and switches that looked like it belonged in a 1950s science fiction movie. "We're not killing anyone. We're simply creating an environment where cohabitation becomes uncomfortable." The copper wires began to vibrate, producing a low hum that Gideon felt in his bones. The bottles of glowing liquid started to bubble without any visible heat source. "Dad!" Sarah's voice broke through, clearer now. "Dad, there's something in my head. It's showing me things, horrible things." Gideon started forward, but one of Fairweather's men caught his arm. "Don't break the circle. You'll make it worse." "She's in pain." "Yes," Fairweather said simply. "Pain is part of the process. The entity feeds on comfort, on the host's acceptance. Pain makes that acceptance impossible." Sarah's eyes rolled back, showing only white. When she spoke again, it was neither her voice nor the entities, but something between them, a grotesque mixture of both. "We could have been eternal together. I could have shown her the universe inside the collected, every story ever told, every voice ever raised in song or scream. She would never have been lonely again." "She wasn't lonely to begin with," Gideon said. "She has me, she has friends, she has a life. A life that ends. A father who leaves, friends who forget. I offered her forever." "You offered her prison," Fairweather corrected. "A museum where she'd be just another exhibit." The light from the rods intensified. Sarah's body began to shake violently, and Gideon saw something impossible. A shadow pulling away from her, three-dimensional and wrong, like someone had cut a hole in reality in the shape of a person. The shadow twisted, fought, tried to sink back into Sarah's skin, but the light held it at bay. With each pulse of the crystalline rods, it was forced further out, revealing more of its true shape. It wasn't humanoid. It wasn't anything Gideon had a word for. It was angles that shouldn't exist, surfaces that folded in on themselves, a geometry that made his brain reject what his eyes were seeing. And it was full of faces, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all pressed against its impossible surface like prisoners against glass. The faces were moving, mouths open, and Gideon realized with horrible clarity that these were the collected. Every voice the thing had ever taken, every person it had ever consumed, trapped forever in its substance. "Release them," Fairweather commanded. "All of them." "They're mine." The entity's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I preserved them. Without me, they're just death and dust." "Then let them be death and dust. That's their right." The entity writhed, pulling more desperately at Sarah, trying to drag itself back into her. For a moment, it seemed to succeed, sinking partway back into her body. Sarah screamed, her own voice this time, pure and terrified. "No!" Gideon broke free from the man holding him, but instead of entering the circle, he did something else. He grabbed the tuning fork from Fairweather's hand and struck it against the wall. Then another, creating a cascade of pure notes that filled the small room. The entity recoiled as if burned. The faces in its substance became clearer, and Gideon could see them mouthing words. "Thank you. Free us. Let go." "They want to leave," Gideon said, understanding flooding through him. The collected. They're not willing prisoners. They want to be released. The entity's form shuddered. They don't know what they want. They're safe with me. Protected. Eternal. "They're dead," Fairweather said quietly, "and you've kept them from their rest. That ends now." He pulled out a second device, something that looked like a camera from another era, all brass and leather and glass lenses that reflected impossible colors. He aimed it at the entity and pressed a button. There was no flash, no sound, but something happened. The entity began to dissolve, not all at once, but in layers, like paint being stripped from a wall. With each layer that disappeared, voices filled the room. not screaming, but sighing, the sound of long-held breath finally being released. "No!" the entity thrashed, trying to hold itself together. "I am the keeper of stories. I am the memory of the forgotten. Without me, they're nothing." "They're free," Sarah said suddenly, her own voice strong and clear. She was looking directly at the entity now, no fear in her eyes. "I can feel them. They're grateful. They want to go." The entity focused on her, its impossible angles shifting. "You would choose oblivion over eternity? I'd choose being myself over being your puppet, even if being yourself means someday being nothing." Sarah managed a weak smile. "Yeah, even then." The entity made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Humans, always choosing the smaller story very well. And then it let go, not just of Sarah, but of everything. The faces in its substance rose to the surface and then through it, becoming momentary wisps of light that dissolved into the air. Hundreds of them, each one a person who had been trapped for years, decades, some for over a century. Gideon thought he saw his mother's face among them, just for an instant, and she was smiling. The entity itself began to shrink, its impossible geometry folding in on itself until it was just a dark mass, then a shadow, then nothing at all. The only thing left was a small pile of what looked like ash on the break room floor. Sarah collapsed. Gideon caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest. She was breathing, her heart was beating, but her eyes were closed and she wasn't responding. "Sarah, Sarah, wake up!" Fairweather knelt beside them, pulling out a small flashlight and checking Sarah's pupils. "She's in shock. The separation was traumatic, but she'll recover. Her mind needs time to reorganize itself without the entity's presence. How long? Hours, maybe days. But she will wake up, Mr. Whitmore, and when she does, she'll be herself, completely herself." One of Fairweather's men was carefully sweeping up the ash, depositing it into a sealed container marked with symbols that hurt to look at. "What will you do with it?" Gideon asked. "Study it. Every entity we encounter teaches us something. How they think, how they function, how to better contain or remove them." Fairweather stood, brushing off his coat. This one was particularly interesting. It didn't just mimic, it preserved. In its own twisted way, it thought it was doing something noble. Was it? Fairweather considered this. Perhaps, from its perspective, but preservation without consent is just another form of imprisonment. The dead deserve their rest, Mr. Whitmore, and the living deserve their freedom, however brief it might be. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. The EMTs didn't ask questions. Gideon suspected Fairweather had something to do with that. They simply loaded Sarah onto a gurney and prepared to transport her to the hospital. "I'm riding with her," Gideon said. Fairweather nodded. "Of course. When she wakes, tell her she was very brave. Not many people could have resisted the way she did. The entity chose her because it sensed something special in her. It was right about that. Just wrong about what to do with it." As the ambulance pulled away, Gideon holding Sarah's hand, he thought about the faces he'd seen in the entity's substance. All those people, trapped for so long, finally free. He wondered if they were at peace now, wherever they'd gone. Sarah woke up 3 days later. Gideon was there, had barely left her side except when the nurses forced him to. He was dozing in the uncomfortable hospital chair when he heard her voice. "Dad?" He jerked awake, immediately leaning forward. "Sarah? Sarah, how do you feel?" She blinked, looking around the hospital room with confusion. "Like I had the worst nightmare ever. Was I in an accident?" "Something like that. Do you remember anything?" She frowned, thinking. We were going to Aunt Linda's, you were scared about something, then the gas station, and..." Her face paled. Oh God. There was something in my head, something that wasn't me. "It's gone now. Mr. Fairweather got it out." The tall man. I remember him. He had kind eyes. She squeezed Gideon's hand. "Dad, the things it showed me. All those people. Don't think about it." "No, it's okay. They weren't scary, they were just sad. They'd been trapped for so long they'd forgotten what it was like to be free. But when they saw me fighting it, they remembered. They started fighting too." "Is that how you resisted it?" Sarah nodded. "It was like having 1,000 people cheering me on, telling me to be strong, to not give up, to choose life, even if life is short and messy and sometimes painful." Gideon kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you, kiddo." "Dad? Yeah? No more weird delivery jobs, okay?" He laughed, the first real laugh he'd had in days. Deal. They went home a week later. The house felt different. Not bad different, just lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted that they hadn't even known was there. Temperance Blackwood called once to check on them, then never called again. The number she'd called from was disconnected the next day. Amos Fairweather sent a single letter, handwritten on expensive paper. "Mr. Whitmore, your daughter's recovery is complete, and there are no traces of the entity remaining. You may return to your normal life without concern. Should you ever encounter anything unusual in your travels, you have my number. Use it." Some people, once touched by the strange, develop a sensitivity to it. Consider it both a gift and a curse. You'll know things others don't, see things others can't. Use this knowledge wisely. Your final payment is enclosed. Consider it a college fund contribution. The check was for $50,000. Gideon went back to trucking, but he was different now. More careful. More aware. He noticed things. The way shadows sometimes moved wrong. The way certain loads felt heavier than they should. The way some clients avoided eye contact too deliberately. 3 times in the following year, he turned down jobs that felt off. Each time, he heard later about problems, trucks that disappeared, drivers who came back changed, cargo that was found scattered across miles of highway with no explanation. Sarah graduated high school with honors. In her valedictorian speech, she talked about the importance of choosing your own path, even when easier roads were offered, about the value of being human, messy, and mortal, and real. Gideon sat in the audience, remembering a break room in a gas station, his daughter possessed by something ancient and hungry, and how she'd chosen herself over eternity. He never forgot the voices in the trailer. Sometimes, late at night on empty highways, he thought he could still hear them, not calling for help anymore, but whispering thank you on the wind. And sometimes, when he passed that abandoned way station where it all started, he'd slow down just a little and listen to the silence. Real silence now, empty and peaceful. The road was just a road. The night was just the night, and his cargo was just cargo. Most of the time. But Gideon had learned to pay attention to the times when it wasn't. To trust his instincts. To know when to drive on and when to stop. And most importantly, he'd learned that some loads weren't worth any amount of money. Some things should stay buried. Some voices shouldn't be collected. And some doors, once opened, can never really be closed again. He drove with that knowledge now, careful and watchful, protecting not just his cargo, but the world from what might be hiding inside it. Because now he knew the truth that most truckers only suspected, that the highways at night were full of more than just trucks and cars. That sometimes the darkness between the headlights held things that had no name, no shape, no place in the rational world. And sometimes those things tried to hitch a ride. But Gideon Whitmore didn't pick up hitchhikers anymore. Not even when they sounded like someone he knew. Not even when they promised him everything. Especially then. He just drove on through the night, eyes on the road, radio turned low, listening for the sounds that didn't belong. Ready to run if he had to. Ready to fight if he couldn't run. Ready to choose the messy, mortal, beautiful human life over any eternity that asked him to give up his soul. The highway stretched on before him, endless and dark, and Gideon drove it with his eyes wide open, knowing that he was never really alone out there, but also knowing that he was strong enough to face whatever was riding along with him in the dark. Most of the time, anyway. And that would have to be enough. Thaddeus Grimshaw had been parked at the Blackwood Trail truck stop for 3 hours when he first heard the footsteps. It was past 2 in the morning, that dead zone when even the most dedicated night drivers pulled over to catch a few hours of sleep before the sun came up. The truck stop sat 40 miles outside of Wheeling, West Virginia, carved into a hillside like an afterthought, surrounded by nothing but pine trees and shadows. No town for miles in any direction. No houses. No lights except for the flickering neon of the stop's sign, half the letters burnt out so it just read, Back-ood Tail. Thaddeus had chosen this spot specifically because it was quiet. After 18 hours on the road hauling refrigerated goods from Detroit to Charlotte, he needed silence more than he needed anything else. His ears were still ringing from construction zones and engine noise. His back ached from sitting in the same position since dawn. All he wanted was to climb into his sleeper cab, close the blackout curtains, and drift off to the sound of absolutely nothing. The lot was nearly empty when he'd pulled in. Just 2 other rigs parked at opposite ends, their drivers probably as exhausted as he was. A beaten-up Corolla sat near the main building, likely belonging to whoever was unlucky enough to pull the night shift at the attached diner. The fuel pumps stood empty under harsh white lights that attracted clouds of moths and mosquitoes. Thaddeus had done his routine. Walked around the truck twice, checking the tires and the reefer unit's temperature. Made sure the doors were locked and sealed. Used the restroom in the main building, avoiding eye contact with the hollow-eyed clerk who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Bought a bottle of water and a candy bar he probably wouldn't eat. The diner was closed, chairs stacked on tables behind dark windows. A handwritten sign said reopens 5 a.m. in shaky letters. The whole place had that abandoned feeling that truck stops got in the deep night, like civilization had pulled back and left just this one fluorescent oasis in the darkness. He'd climbed into his cab, locked both doors, and settled into the narrow bunk behind the seats. The sleeper was his sanctuary. Blackout curtains drawn tight, small fan running for white noise, foam mattress that knew the shape of his body after 5 years on the road. He'd kicked off his boots, set his phone alarm for 5:30, and closed his eyes. Sleep had just started to take him when he heard it. Footsteps on gravel. Slow, deliberate, circling his truck. Thaddeus's eyes snapped open. He lay still, listening. Sometimes lot lizards worked these remote stops, knocking on doors, looking for lonely drivers willing to pay for company. But they usually called out, announced themselves. These footsteps were quiet, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. The footsteps stopped at his driver's side door. Thaddeus held his breath. A soft knock, 3 taps, evenly spaced. He didn't move, didn't respond. Maybe if he stayed quiet, whoever it was would assume he was asleep and move on. The knock came again, harder this time. Then a voice muffled through the door. "Hey, driver, you awake?" Male voice. Rough, like someone who'd been smoking for decades. Not a lot lizard then. Maybe another trucker with mechanical trouble, looking for help. Thaddeus sat up slowly, careful not to rock the cab. He peered through a gap in the curtains. The lot was still mostly empty, but he couldn't see anyone at his door from this angle. "Driver, I know you're in there. I can see you moving around." That wasn't possible. The curtains were completely drawn. The cab was dark. There was no way anyone could see inside. "Look, I just need to use your phone," the voice continued. "Mine's dead, and the payphone in there's been broken for months. Just for a minute, make one call, and I'll be out of your hair." Thaddeus reached for his phone, thinking maybe he could call the police. But there was no signal. Not unusual out here in the hills, but inconvenient now. The doorknob rattled. Tested. "Come on, man. It's cold out here." It wasn't cold. It was August. The temperature hadn't dropped below 70 all week. Thaddeus grabbed the tire iron he kept beside the bunk. The weight of it in his hand was reassuring. He'd never had to use it on a person, but there was always a first time. "I'm trying to sleep," he called out, making his voice deeper, rougher. "Move along." Silence for a moment. Then, "Thaddeus." Ice water flooded his veins. He hadn't told anyone his name. His company name was on the truck, sure, but not his personal name. "Thaddeus Grimshaw, born in Akron, divorced, one kid you haven't seen in 3 years. Is that about right?" His hand tightened on the tire iron. "Who are you?" A laugh, dry as dead leaves. "Just someone who needs to use a phone, that's all. But the longer you make me wait out here, the more interesting our conversation's going to get." The footsteps started again, circling to the passenger side. Thaddeus twisted to watch, tracking the sound. His passenger door was locked too, but locks only worked if someone was playing by the rules. The footsteps stopped. Then, impossibly, he heard them above him, on the roof of the cab. The metal creaked under the weight. Footsteps walked from front to back, paused over the sleeper section where Thaddeus sat frozen, then walked back to the front. "Nice truck," the voice said, now coming from directly overhead. "Peterbilt 579, 2018 model looks like. You take good care of it. Oil changed regular, tires rotated, but you missed something in your last inspection. Get off my truck. The seal on your sleeper vent. It's loose. Been loose for weeks, probably. Just need someone to give it a good pull and pop. There's a hole big enough to reach through." Thaddeus looked up at the small ventilation panel in the ceiling of the sleeper. It was secured with 4 screws, a metal grate over it. Solid, safe. The grate rattled. "Like I said," the voice continued conversationally, "just needs the right leverage." One of the screws fell out, landing on Thaddeus's pillow with a tiny ping. He scrambled out of the sleeper, through the gap between the seats, and into the driver's seat. His hands shook as he tried to get the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. "There we go," the voice said, amused. "Now we're getting somewhere." Thaddeus slammed the truck into gear, ready to tear out of the lot when he saw him. A man stood directly in front of the truck, caught in the headlights. Tall, thin, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. Pants too short, jacket too loose. His face was wrong somehow, like the features had been arranged by someone who'd only heard descriptions of faces but never seen one. Too much space between the eyes. Mouth too wide. Skin that looked gray under the lights. The man, Ichabod Thornfield, though Thaddeus didn't know that name yet, smiled. His teeth were perfect. Too perfect. Like dentures in a skull. "You're not really going to run me over, are you, Thaddeus?" Thaddeus's foot hovered over the gas pedal. Every instinct screamed at him to floor it, to drive through this thing that looked like a man but wasn't. But he couldn't. Some part of him, the human part that followed human rules, couldn't deliberately drive over someone standing still in front of him. That's what I thought, Ichabod said. You're a good man. Follow the rules. Don't hurt people. That's why I picked you. Picked me for what? To let me in, of course. Another screw fell from the ceiling vent. Then another. Thaddeus looked up just as the grate fell, clanging against the floor. Through the hole he could see stars. Then the stars were blocked by something reaching down. A hand, too long, too thin, fingers like white worms stretching toward him. He threw himself against the driver's door, fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't budge. The mechanism was jammed or held, or the fingers touched his shoulder. Cold. Colder than anything had a right to be in August. Cold that burned through his shirt, through his skin, straight into the bone. Thaddeus screamed, twisting away, but the fingers held on. Just let me in. Ichabod's voice came from everywhere now, outside, above, maybe inside Thaddeus's own head. It's so much easier if you just let me in. Thaddeus swung the tire iron blindly upward, connecting with something that felt like flesh, but gave way like rotten fruit. There was a shriek, inhuman and piercing, and the fingers released him. He hit the passenger door, found it unlocked, and tumbled out onto the gravel. His shoulder was numb where those fingers had touched, the feeling spreading down his arm. He ran. Not toward the main building. That was what Ichabod would expect. Instead, Thaddeus ran towards the tree line, crashing through undergrowth, branches tearing at his clothes. Behind him, he heard laughter. Running makes it more fun, Thaddeus, but you can't run from someone who's already inside. What did that mean? Inside what? Inside where? Thaddeus stumbled over a root, caught himself, kept running. The numbness had spread to his chest now, making it hard to breathe. His left arm hung useless at his side. He could see lights through the trees. Another road, maybe. Another truck stop. Help! He burst out of the woods onto asphalt, nearly getting clipped by a passing car that honked angrily. But when he looked around, his heart sank. He was back at the Blackwood Trail truck stop. His truck sat exactly where he'd left it. Engine still running, lights still on, as if he'd never left. But that was impossible. He'd run straight. He'd gone at least a quarter mile into the woods. There was no way he could have circled back without knowing it. Geography's funny out here, Ichabod said, stepping out from behind Thaddeus's truck. Roads that go nowhere. Woods that loop back on themselves. Places that exist between places. You picked a bad spot to stop, Thaddeus. What do you want? I told you. To come in, to get warm, to use your phone. Ichabod tilted his head at an angle that necks shouldn't bend. To wear something that fits better than this. He gestured at himself, at the ill-fitting clothes, the wrong face, the body that moved like a marionette with half its strings cut. This was the best I could do with what was available. But you're fresh, healthy. All that time on the road, all those miles, all that isolation, you're practically hollow already, perfect for moving in. Understanding crashed over Thaddeus like cold water. You want my body, your memories, your life. Don't worry, you won't feel a thing after the first few minutes, and I'll take good care of everything. Pay your child support. Call your mother on her birthday. Be a better Thaddeus Grimshaw than you ever were. Go to hell. Ichabod laughed. Been there. It was boring. This is much more interesting. He started walking toward Thaddeus, movements jerky but purposeful. Thaddeus backed away, but his legs felt heavy, clumsy. The numbness had spread to his hips, his thighs. Soon he wouldn't be able to run at all. The main building. If he could get inside, find that clerk, maybe. He stumbled toward the entrance. Ichabod following at that strange, stuttering pace. The automatic doors slid open, revealing the harsh, fluorescent interior. The clerk was gone. The register stood open, empty. The lights flickered, casting shifting shadows that didn't match anything in the store. "Silas!" Thaddeus shouted. He didn't know how he knew the clerk's name, but he did. "Silas Coldwell, where are you?" He stepped out, Ichabod said from the doorway. "Smoke break, or maybe he's in the back doing inventory, or maybe he was never here at all. Hard to tell in places like this, isn't it? Places that exist in the cracks. Places where the rules are more like suggestions." Thaddeus grabbed a can from the shelf. Soup, heavy enough to throw. His right arm still worked, even if the rest of him was failing. "Stay back." "Or what? You'll throw soup at me?" Ichabod stepped inside, the fluorescent lights making his gray skin look green. "That body's dying, Thaddeus. Every second you resist, more cells shut down. More neurons stop firing. Soon, there won't be enough of you left to fight. Why make it harder than it needs to be?" Thaddeus threw the can. It passed right through Ichabod's head like he was made of smoke clattering against the wall behind him. "That's the problem with places like this," Ichabod said, reforming, his face reassembling like water finding its shape. "The rules keep changing. Sometimes I'm solid, sometimes I'm not. Depends on what the place needs me to be." The lights flickered again, and in the darkness between, Thaddeus saw other figures. Shadows of people standing in the aisles, watching. Some in trucker clothes, some in uniforms decades out of date. All with that same hollow look in their eyes. "Previous tenants," Ichabod explained, following his gaze. "Drivers who stopped here over the years. The ones who couldn't leave. Don't worry, you won't end up like them. I have special plans for you." Thaddeus backed toward the rear of the store where a sign marked "Employees Only" promised an exit. His left leg was completely numb now, dragging behind him. "Silas," he called again. "Silas Coldwell, I know you're here." "Interesting that you know his name," Ichabod mused, still following at that unhurried pace. "You've never met him before tonight, never been to this stop before. So how do you know Silas Coldwell?" Thaddeus didn't know how to answer that. The name had just been there in his mind, like a memory that wasn't his own. He pushed through the employee door into a narrow hallway. Boxes lined the walls, old inventory covered in dust. A time clock from the 1950s hung crooked, still punching cards for workers who'd been dead for decades. At the end of the hall, another door. Exit painted in fading red letters. He stumbled toward it, right hand on the wall for support. Behind him, Ichabod's footsteps echoed off the linoleum. "You're feeling it now, aren't you?" Ichabod called. "The way this place gets into your head. Shows you things, tells you things, like how Silas Coldwell died in 1987. Heart attack right behind that counter. They found him 3 days later, but he still shows up for his shifts sometimes. Creature of habit." The exit door was locked. Of course it was. Thaddeus slammed his good shoulder against it, but it didn't budge. The wood was solid, old, swollen with decades of humidity. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," Ichabod said, closer now. "In about 2 minutes, that numbness is going to reach your brain. You'll still be conscious. I need you conscious for the transfer, but you won't be able to control anything. You'll be a passenger in your own body. Then I'll climb in, make myself comfortable, and you'll sink down into the dark where all the previous owners go." "Previous owners? Oh yes. This body isn't my first. Won't be my last either. I've been doing this for, how long has it been? Hard to keep track. The first one was a traveling salesman in 1953. Nice fellow. Sold brushes door to door. Then there was a hippie in 71, an accountant in 85, a soccer mom in 99. each one good for a few years before they start breaking down. Thaddeus spotted a fire extinguisher on the wall. He grabbed it with his good hand, surprised he could still lift it, and spun around just as Ichabod reached for him. The metal cylinder connected with Ichabod's head with a wet crunch. This time it was solid. This time it hit. Ichabod stumbled back, black liquid oozing from a gash in his temple. He touched it, looked at his fingers, and smiled. Oh, good. We're in the solid phase now. This should be fun. He lunged forward, faster than that jerky gait should have allowed. Thaddeus swung the extinguisher again, but Ichabod caught it, wrenching it from his weakening grip. With his other hand, he grabbed Thaddeus by the throat. The cold was immediate, overwhelming. Not just in his throat, but spreading through his whole body like ice water in his veins. Thaddeus gasped, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Shh," Ichabod whispered, pulling him close. His breath smelled like formaldehyde and old meat. Just let it happen. It's easier if you don't fight. Thaddeus's vision started to tunnel. Dark spots danced at the edges. He could feel his consciousness slipping, sinking, making room for something else. Then a voice, loud and commanding. "Let him go!" Ichabod's grip loosened slightly. They both turned to see Silas Coldwell standing at the end of the hallway, but not the hollow-eyed clerk Thaddeus had glimpsed earlier. This Silas was solid, present, wearing a uniform from a different era but absolutely real. "You're dead," Ichabod said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Dead, not gone," Silas replied. "This is still my stop, my shift, and you're not welcome here. You can't stop me. You're just an echo, a recording, maybe." Silas stepped forward, and the light steadied, stopped flickering. "But this is my place. I worked this counter for 37 years, died behind it, chose to stay, and in my place I make the rules." The hallway began to change. The walls straightened, the dust disappeared, the old boxes became neat shelves. It was like watching time reverse, the truck stop returning to what it had been in its prime. Ichabod's grip on Thaddeus loosened more. "This isn't possible." "Lot of things aren't possible," Silas said. "Doesn't stop them from happening, especially not here in the spaces between. You should know that better than anyone, body thief." He reached out and touched Ichabod's shoulder. Just a light touch, but Ichabod screamed like he'd been burned. He released Thaddeus, who collapsed against the wall gasping. "You need to leave," Silas told Ichabod. "Find another stop, another driver. This one's under my protection now. You can't protect him forever. You're tied to this place. He'll have to leave eventually. Maybe, but not with you wearing him." Ichabod snarled, his face distorting, features sliding like melting wax. For a moment, Thaddeus saw what was underneath. Not a face at all, but a void. An absence in the shape of a person, hungry and endless. Then Ichabod turned and walked back through the store, his form already starting to fade. By the time he reached the automatic doors, he was translucent. By the time he stepped outside, he was gone. Silas helped Thaddeus to his feet. The numbness was receding, feeling returning to his limbs in painful tingles. "Thank you," Thaddeus gasped. "Don't thank me yet. He's not gone, just waiting. Creatures like him, they're patient. He'll follow you now. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. When you're tired enough, isolated enough, vulnerable enough." "What is he?" Silas shrugged. "Does it matter? Something old, something hungry, something that learned it's easier to steal lives than live one. There's more of them out there than you'd think. Riding in bodies that don't belong to them, living lives they didn't earn." "How do I stop him?" "You don't. You just stay alert." Stay around people. Don't stop at places like this, the in-between places, the forgotten places. They're thin spots where things like him can reach through. Silas led him back through the store, which looked normal again. Fluorescent bright, properly stocked, even a fresh pot of coffee brewing behind the counter. "Your truck's safe," Silas said. "He can't get in without your permission. That's the one rule even he can't break. You have to let him in one way or another." "I didn't let him. You stopped here. You parked in the dark corner of the lot. You ignored your instincts that told you something was wrong. That's permission enough for something like him." They stepped outside. The night air felt warm, normal, real. Thaddeus's truck was still running, lights still on, looking exactly as he'd left it, except for the open passenger door. "Get in," Silas said. "Drive. Don't stop until sunrise, and then only at busy places. Lots of witnesses. Lots of light." Thaddeus climbed into his cab, legs still shaky. The vent in the ceiling was intact, screws in place, like nothing had ever happened, but his shoulder ached with cold where those fingers had touched him, and he knew it hadn't been a dream. "What about you?" he asked Silas. "I'll be here. I'm always here. Someone has to be, to help the ones like you, to keep the things like him from taking everyone who stops." Silas smiled sadly. "It's not much of an afterlife, but it's mine. Why? Why stay? Because I was like you once. Driving tired, stopped at the wrong place, almost got taken by something hungry. Another ghost saved me, Martha, her name was. Worked the kitchen here in the 60s. She held it off long enough for me to escape. When my time came, when that heart attack hit, I chose to stay. Pay it forward, you might say." Thaddeus started to thank him again, but Silas was already fading, becoming translucent like Ichabod had, but different. Peaceful, like morning mist instead of shadow. "Drive safe," Silas's voice echoed as he disappeared. "And remember, he's still out there, waiting." Thaddeus didn't need to be told twice. He threw the truck in gear and peeled out of the lot, tires spinning on gravel. In his mirrors, the Blackwood Trail truck stop grew smaller, its broken neon sign flickering like it was waving goodbye. He drove without stopping for 3 hours, until the sun was well up and he found a Flying J packed with other trucks, families in minivans, normal people living normal lives. Only then did he allow himself to stop, parking right under a security camera, surrounded by witnesses. He called his dispatcher, told them he was taking a few days off, family emergency. The dispatcher grumbled but approved it. Then he called his ex-wife. "Thad, it's 7 in the morning. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I wanted to hear your voice and Katie's. Is she up?" A pause. "She's getting ready for school. Thad, you haven't called in months." "I know. I'm sorry. I want to change that. Can I come see her this weekend?" Another pause, longer. "She'd like that. We're having her birthday party Saturday. Nothing fancy, just family. I'll be there." He hung up and sat in his cab, watching normal people do normal things. A father helping his kids out of a car seat. A woman walking her dog. A young couple sharing coffee and donuts. Life. Regular, messy, beautiful life. The kind Ichabod wanted to steal. The kind Thaddeus had been taking for granted. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You can't stay in crowds forever. You can't stay awake forever. I'm very patient." Thaddeus deleted it. Then he blocked the number. It wouldn't stop Ichabod, but it felt good to do something. He climbed into his bunk, exhausted but afraid to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that void where Ichabod's face should be. felt those cold fingers on his shoulder. But eventually, exhaustion won. He slept fitfully, waking every hour to check the locks, check the vents, check that he was still alone in his cab. When evening came, he drove again. Stuck to main highways, well-traveled routes, stopped only at major truck stops with good lighting and security. Never the forgotten places, never the in-between spaces. But sometimes, in his peripheral vision, he'd see someone walking alongside the highway. Someone tall and thin in ill-fitting clothes. Someone who waved when Thaddeus looked directly at them, then disappeared into the darkness. Waiting. 3 days later, Thaddeus made it to his daughter's birthday party. Katie hugged him like she hadn't seen him in years, which wasn't far from the truth. They ate cake, played games, acted like a normal family for a few hours. That night, his ex-wife Sarah let him sleep on the couch. "You look terrible," she said. "Are you sick?" "Just tired, long drives." "Maybe it's time to find different work. Something that keeps you closer to home." "Maybe," he agreed. But he knew he couldn't stop driving. Not yet. Because if he stopped, if he settled in one place, Ichabod would find him. Would wait for the right moment of weakness, of isolation, of vulnerability. So he kept moving, kept driving, kept checking his mirrors for someone who shouldn't be there. 2 months passed. 2 months of constant motion, of never sleeping in the same place twice, of checking every shadow and questioning every stranger. Thaddeus had developed a routine that kept him safe, but was slowly killing him in other ways. He only stopped at major chains. Love's Pilot Flying J, always parked under lights, always near other trucks. He installed new locks on his cab doors, the kind that couldn't be picked or jimmied. He sealed the ceiling vent with industrial adhesive and metal plates. He kept the tire iron within arm's reach at all times. But you can't run forever. The human body needs real rest, not just the fitful dozing he managed in busy parking lots. The constant vigilance was wearing him down. He'd lost 20 pounds. His hands shook from too much caffeine. His eyes had that 1,000-yard stare that comes from never truly relaxing. The money was running out too. He'd been taking only short hauls, easy runs that kept him on major highways. The pay was less, and the fuel costs were eating into his savings. His ex-wife had started asking questions about why he looked so thin, why he jumped at sudden noises, why he insisted on sleeping with all the lights on when he visited Katie. It was a Tuesday night in October when things changed. Thaddeus was hauling a load of furniture from Cincinnati to Richmond, a route he'd run 50 times before. He knew every mile of I-64, every exit, every safe place to stop. But somewhere near the West Virginia border, a construction zone forced a detour. Orange signs directed traffic off the highway onto state routes he didn't recognize. The GPS recalculated, showing a path through backroads that would add an hour to his trip. He almost turned back. Almost said, forget the delivery, forget the money. But he was already an hour behind schedule due to earlier construction. And this was a good client. One he couldn't afford to lose. The detour took him through small towns that looked abandoned, past farmhouses with no lights, along stretches of road where the trees pressed in close and the radio turned to static. He kept checking his mirrors, looking for someone walking along the shoulder, someone in ill-fitting clothes. Nothing. Just darkness and his own headlights cutting through it. He was starting to relax, starting to think maybe Ichabod had given up or found an easier target when he saw the truck stop. It wasn't supposed to be there. He'd studied the route on his atlas before the GPS died. They always died on the back roads. And there was no truck stop marked. But there it was, a fluorescent oasis in the darkness. The sign read Crossroads Rest, in letters that flickered between white and red. He wasn't going to stop. No chance. He'd drive on fumes if he had to. But as he passed, he saw something that made him slam the brakes. Katie's car. His daughter's beat-up Honda Civic with the dented rear bumper and the college sticker in the window. Parked right there in the lot. That was impossible. Katie was at home, 300 miles away. She had school tomorrow. There was no reason for her to be here. No way she could even know where here was. But it was definitely her car. He recognized the scratch on the driver's door from when she'd misjudged a parking space. The fuzzy dice hanging from the mirror that she'd bought as a joke. He pulled into the lot against every instinct screaming at him to keep driving. The place looked wrong, like someone had tried to copy a truck stop from memory and gotten the proportions off. The building was too wide, too flat. The windows were dark except for a faint glow from somewhere deep inside. Thaddeus parked next to Katie's car and looked inside. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her phone was on the dashboard. The keys were still in the ignition. The driver's door was open. "Katie!" He ran toward the building, tire iron in hand. "Katie, where are you?" The automatic doors didn't open. He had to push them, and they moved reluctantly, like they were fighting him. Inside, the truck stop was empty. Not just of people, but of products. The shelves were bare. The coolers were dark. The only light came from a single fluorescent tube that buzzed and flickered. "Katie!" "She's in the back." Thaddeus spun around. Ichabod stood by the doors, looking exactly as he had 2 months ago. Same ill-fitting clothes, same wrong face, same hungry void where his eyes should be. "You son of a..." "Language, Thaddeus. Your daughter might hear you." "If you've hurt her..." "Hurt her?" "I haven't touched her, haven't needed to. She came here all on her own. Well, she thought she was driving to her friend's house. But roads are funny things. Sometimes they take you where you need to go, not where you want to go." "Let her go." "Of course, as soon as you take her place." Ichabod smiled that too wide smile. "That's always been the deal, hasn't it? You knew I'd find a way, if not through you, then through someone you care about. Your ex-wife, your daughter, your mother in that nursing home in Akron. You're bluffing. You can't really have her. Room 7, the old motel section they closed in 2003. She's waiting for you. Probably wondering why her car won't start, why her phone won't work, why the nice man who offered to help keeps asking such strange questions." Thaddeus pushed past him, through the empty store, following signs for motel that looked hand-painted and fresh. A hallway led to a section of the building that shouldn't exist. It was too big, extended too far for the structure he'd seen from outside. The motel rooms lined up like teeth, all closed except for number 7. The door stood slightly open, warm light spilling out. He pushed it open with the tire iron. Katie sat on the bed, staring at nothing. Her eyes were open but vacant, like she was sleepwalking. A man sat next to her, another wrong-looking person in clothes that didn't fit, face that didn't quite work. This one was younger-looking, wearing a Letterman jacket from a high school that probably hadn't existed for decades. "Hello," the man said in a voice like autumn leaves. "I'm Silas Coldwell." "No," Thaddeus said. "Silas was the ghost at the other stop, the one who helped me. Was he? Or was that just what you needed to see, what you needed to believe to trust him?" The thing calling itself Silas stood up. "We've been doing this for so long, Ichabod and I. He drives them to me. I give them hope, back and forth, wearing them down, until they're too tired to fight anymore. You're lying. Am I? Think about it. How did I know exactly when to appear? How did I have the power to drive Ichabod away? Why did he leave so easily?" The doubt crept in like cold air through a crack. Had it all been a setup? A good cop, bad cop routine played by things that weren't even human. "Daddy?" Katie's voice, small and confused. She was looking at him now, really looking, but her eyes kept sliding away like she couldn't quite focus. "I'm here, baby. I'm going to get you out." I don't know how I got here. I was driving to Madison's house, and then the road looked different, and my car stopped. And these men said they'd help, but they keep asking strange questions. They want to know about you. It's okay. We're leaving now. He reached for her hand. She took it, her fingers cold but real, solid. He pulled her to her feet. "You can't leave," the false Silas said. "Not both of you. That's not how it works. Someone has to stay. Someone always has to stay. Watch me." Thaddeus headed for the door, pulling Katie with him, but the door wouldn't budge. It had been open seconds ago, but now it was sealed shut. Not just locked, but fused, like the wood had grown together. "Every place like this needs an anchor," Ichabod said, appearing in the corner of the room like he'd always been there. Someone to draw others in. For 40 years, it was the real Silas Coldwell. But he finally faded, used up, nothing left but echoes. So we need a replacement. The real Silas, so he was real, he did help me. Oh yes, right up until we ate him. Delicious. All that guilt and duty. Sustained us for months. Ichabod licked his lips with a tongue that was too long, too dark. But now we need fresh meat. And you've been marinating in fear for 2 months. You'll be perfect. They started closing in from both sides. Thaddeus pushed Katie behind him, raised the tire iron. "That won't work this time," the false Silas said. "This is our place. We make the rules here." The tire iron crumbled to rust in Thaddeus's hands, orange powder falling through his fingers. "However," Ichabod said, "we're not unreasonable. We'll make you a deal. You stay, we let her go. Simple trade." "She won't remember any of this," false Silas added. "She'll wake up in her car at a real rest stop thinking she dozed off. Normal life continues. All it costs is you." Thaddeus looked at Katie, at her confused, frightened face. 17 years old, her whole life ahead of her. College applications on her desk. Boyfriend waiting for her to text back. Friends planning a Halloween party, a life, a real life. "Okay," he said. "No!" Katie grabbed his arm. "Dad, no! We can fight them." "With what, kiddo? They're right, this is their place. But," he turned to her, put his hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. You're going to leave here. You're going to forget this happened. You're going to live your life. Go to college. Fall in love. Have kids of your own someday. And you're not going to end up like me, running scared, looking over your shoulder. Dad, please. I love you, Katie. I haven't said that enough, haven't been there enough. But I love you." She was crying now. "I love you too." "Good, remember that. Even if you forget everything else, remember that." He looked at Ichabod and false Silas. "Do it." They moved in perfect synchronization, each placing a hand on one of his shoulders. The cold was immediate, overwhelming, but different this time. Not pushing in, but pulling out, drawing something from him. His strength, his will, his connection to the world outside this place. He felt himself becoming hollow, empty, a shell waiting to be filled. Or maybe just waiting to be used up like the real Silas had been. Katie's hand slipped from his. He tried to hold on, but his fingers wouldn't close. She was fading, or he was, the distance between them growing even though neither moved. "Daddy!" Her voice echoed like it was coming from the other end of a tunnel. Then she was gone. Not disappeared, just elsewhere. Somewhere safe, somewhere real. "Good," Ichabod said. "Very good." You'll make an excellent anchor. All that love, all that sacrifice, it'll draw them like moths to flame." Thaddeus tried to speak, but his voice was already fading. He could feel himself spreading out, becoming part of the place, his consciousness seeping into the walls, the floors, the very air. "Don't fight it," False Silas advised. "Fighting makes it hurt more. Just let yourself disperse. Become the place, become the trap." But Thaddeus did fight. Not against the spreading, but with it. If he was going to become this place, then he was going to change it. Make it his. He thought about Katie, about her smile, her laugh, the way she used to fall asleep on his shoulder during long drives when she was little. He pushed those memories into the walls. He thought about his ex-wife Sarah, their wedding day, the good years before the road took him away, the way she still looked at him sometimes like she remembered who he used to be. He pressed those feelings into the foundation. He thought about every sunrise he'd seen from his cab, every kind stranger at a truck stop, every moment of beauty on the endless highway. He forced all of it into the bones of this trap. "What are you doing?" Ichabod sounded alarmed for the first time. "Stop that!" But Thaddeus couldn't stop. He was already too far gone, spread too thin. But spread thin meant spread everywhere, in every board, every nail, every atom of this place. And he filled it all with love, with humanity, with everything these creatures couldn't understand or digest. The false Silas screamed first, his form flickering, melting. "It burns! Make him stop!" "I can't." Ichabod was backing away, but there was nowhere to go. The whole place was Thaddeus now, and Thaddeus was remembering what it meant to be human. To choose love over fear, sacrifice over survival. The creatures tried to flee, but the doors wouldn't open for them. Why would they? Thaddeus controlled the doors now. Controlled everything. "You wanted an anchor." His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You got one." He squeezed. Not physically, he had no body left, but with will, with purpose, with all the love he'd never properly expressed, focused into a single, crushing force. The creatures imploded. Not dramatically, not violently. They simply ceased, crushed out of existence by something they could neither understand nor consume. And then, Thaddeus was alone. Alone was a relative term. Thaddeus existed now as the Crossroads Rest truck stop. Every board and nail, every flickering light, every crack in the asphalt. He could feel everything. The wind against the walls, the weight of dust settling on shelves, the vibration of trucks passing on the distant highway. He was vast and small at once, everywhere and nowhere. Time moved differently when you were a place instead of a person. Minutes could stretch into hours, hours collapse into seconds. He watched the sun rise and set through windows that were his eyes, felt the temperature change through walls that were his skin. Katie was safe. He knew that absolutely. She'd woken up at a real rest stop 50 miles away, confused but unharmed, with a story about falling asleep while driving that she'd tell her mother with embarrassment. She'd remember having a strange dream about her father, but nothing more. The creatures had kept their word about that, at least, before he'd destroyed them. The first traveler arrived 3 days later, or maybe 3 hours, or maybe 3 weeks. Time had become negotiable. It was a trucker, naturally. Lost, taking a detour around construction. GPS failing in the dead zone that seemed to surround this place. His name was Marcus, and he was hauling produce from Florida to Ohio, fighting to stay awake after too many hours on the road. Thaddeus felt him enter the parking lot, felt the weight of his truck on the asphalt, felt his exhaustion, his loneliness, the way he kept checking his phone for messages from an ex-girlfriend who never wrote back. Marcus approached the building cautiously, the way smart drivers approached places that shouldn't exist, hand on a weapon. A crowbar. Thaddeus could feel its cold metal presence. Good. Smart. Stay defensive. The automatic doors opened smoothly for Marcus. Thaddeus made sure of that. Inside, the lights were bright and welcoming. The shelves were stocked with normal things: chips, candy, energy drinks, everything a tired driver might need. Marcus relaxed slightly, though he kept the crowbar close. He grabbed a coffee from a machine that Thaddeus kept hot and fresh, paid at a register that worked perfectly, used a restroom that was clean and well lit. "Thank you," Marcus said to the empty store as he left, the way lonely people sometimes talk to themselves. "Drive safe," Thaddeus whispered with the wind as Marcus's truck pulled away. More came after that. Truckers mostly, but also families on road trips. Teenagers sneaking out past curfew. Traveling salesmen working territories that barely existed anymore. Thaddeus served them all, kept them safe, sent them on their way. He learned to manifest more actively when needed. A working phone when someone's car broke down. A clean bed in the motel section when someone was too tired to drive safely. Sometimes even a voice on the intercom, offering directions or warnings about weather ahead. But being a place meant being open to more than just normal travelers. They started arriving after the first month. Things like Ichabod and the false Silas, drawn to the crossroads like flies to honey. They came in different shapes, shadow figures that moved wrong, too perfect humans with hollow eyes, creatures that looked like truckers until you noticed they had no reflection. They wanted in, wanted to use his space as a hunting ground, a trap for the unwary. They whispered promises and threats through his walls, tried to claw their way through his defenses. Thaddeus kept them out. Every time. The love he'd poured into this place was like acid to them. They couldn't enter without his permission, and he'd never give it. This was his stop now, and he protected those who sheltered here. One night, a woman arrived driving an old station wagon, her 3 kids asleep in the back. She was running from something. An abusive ex. Thaddeus could feel it in her desperation, the way she kept checking the rear-view mirror. She'd been driving for 16 hours straight, eyes heavy, hands shaking from caffeine and fear. Behind her, following at a careful distance, was something that looked like a man but wasn't. It drove a black sedan that moved too smoothly, took curves too perfectly. It had been following her for 200 miles, waiting for her to stop somewhere isolated. Thaddeus locked the doors behind her when she entered, made them stronger than they'd ever been. The thing in the sedan parked outside, engine running, waiting. "You can sleep here," Thaddeus said through the intercom, making his voice gentle, fatherly. "The motel room's free. You and your kids will be safe." The woman started crying. I don't have money for..." "It's free," he repeated. "Room 7. The door's already open. There's fresh sheets, working locks, and I'll watch the parking lot all night." She gathered her sleeping children, carried them one by one to the room. Thaddeus made sure the beds were soft, the temperature perfect, the locks unbreakable. The thing in the sedan tried to follow. It approached the motel section, reached for the door to room 7. Thaddeus electrified the handle. Not enough to kill. He wasn't a killer, even now, but enough to hurt. The thing jerked back, hissing. "She's under my protection," Thaddeus said, his voice coming from every speaker, every crack, every surface. "Leave now. Don't follow her anymore." The thing snarled, revealing too many teeth. "You can't protect everyone, Ghost. You can't be everywhere." "I don't need to be everywhere, just here. And here I make the rules." He turned every light in the parking lot toward the sedan. Thousands of watts of harsh white light that revealed the thing's true form. Something insectile and wrong. wearing a human shape like an ill-fitting costume. It shrieked and fled, leaving only the smell of sulfur and burned rubber. The woman and her children slept for 12 hours. When they woke, Thaddeus had manifested breakfast in the store. Real food, hot and nourishing. The woman tried to pay again, but the register wouldn't take her money. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty store. "Whoever you are, thank you. You're welcome," the wind whispered back. She left with directions to a women's shelter 3 states away, where her sister was waiting. The thing that had been following her never returned. That became his purpose, not just serving travelers, but protecting them. The Crossroads Rest became known, in that underground way that such things become known, as a safe place. Truckers would tell each other about it in hushed tones. If you're ever in real trouble, there's this stop off Route 64. Doesn't show on maps, but it's there when you need it. 6 months in, or maybe 6 years, time remained fluid. Katie visited. She didn't mean to. She was driving back from college for Thanksgiving break, took a wrong turn in construction, and found herself pulling into the lot. Thaddeus felt her presence like a warm light, familiar and painful at once. She entered cautiously, looking around with a frown. This place feels familiar. Thaddeus wanted to speak to her, to tell her he was there, that he loved her, that he was proud of the woman she was becoming. But that would be selfish. She had a life to live, one free from the knowledge of what lurked in the spaces between. Instead, he just made sure her coffee was perfect. Her favorite candy bar was in stock, and the restroom was spotless. As she was leaving, he couldn't resist one small indulgence. On the counter, he manifested a note. "Drive safe, kiddo. D." She stared at it for a long moment, tears forming in her eyes, though she didn't know why. Then she smiled, folded the note carefully, and put it in her pocket. "Thanks, Dad," she whispered to the empty store, not understanding why she said it. After she left, Thaddeus felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but a kind of contentment. He had a purpose. He was protecting people, including his daughter, even if she'd never know it. The years passed, or maybe they didn't. Time was meaningless when you were a location. Travelers came and went. Some needed just coffee and directions. Others needed protection from things that shouldn't exist. Thaddeus served them all. He learned to recognize the regular threats. The body thieves like Ichabod, always looking for new hosts. The feeders that drained life force from the exhausted. The mimics that copied loved ones' voices to lure people off safe paths. He kept them all at bay, made his stop a sanctuary in the darkness. Sometimes he wondered if this was hell or heaven or something in between. He existed but didn't live. He protected but couldn't be protected. He loved but couldn't be loved in return. But then a child would laugh in his store, delighted by candy that appeared when their parents weren't looking. Or a weary trucker would find exactly the part they needed to fix their rig, even though he'd never stocked such things. Or something hungry and evil would slam against his defenses and fail to get through, leaving its intended victim safe and unaware. Those moments made it worthwhile. He learned to manifest more actively over time. Not a full body, that was beyond him, but a presence. A helpful clerk who was only there when you weren't quite looking. A voice on a CB radio giving traffic updates, sometimes just a feeling of safety, of being watched over by something benevolent. The other drivers started calling him the guardian of Crossroads. They'd leave small offerings sometimes, a fresh cup of coffee poured on the ground, a cigarette left burning on the counter, a thank you note tucked under a windshield wiper. He couldn't consume any of it, but he appreciated the gesture. One night, decades or minutes after he'd become the place, another ghost arrived. It was the real Silas Coldwell. Not the thing that had pretended to be him, but the actual spirit of the man who'd died at his register in 1987. He manifested as a translucent figure behind the counter, looking tired but relieved. "They kept me trapped for so long," Silas said. "Used my image, my voice, my memory. But when you destroyed them, I was finally free to move on. I came to thank you. You really did help me that first night. As much as I could while they were feeding on me, you helped me more in the end. You freed all of us they'd consumed. What happens now? To you?" Silas smiled. "I rest. Finally, what about you?" "I stay. Someone has to." "Forever?" "As long as there are travelers who need protection. As long as there are things hunting in the dark. As long as my daughter is out there living her life, needing the roads to be a little safer." Silas nodded. "You're a better man than most, Thaddeus Grimshaw." "I'm not a man anymore." "No," Silas agreed. "You're something more. A guardian, a protector, a father still, in your own way." He started to fade, not into nothingness, but into something brighter. "Thank you," he said as he disappeared, "for everything." And then Thaddeus was alone again, but not lonely. He had work to do. A new truck was pulling into the lot. The driver was exhausted, scared, running from something. Thaddeus could feel it following, something old and hungry, drawn by the scent of fear. The automatic doors opened smoothly, invitingly. The lights were warm and welcoming. The coffee was fresh and hot. "Welcome to Crossroads Rest," Thaddeus said through the intercom. "You're safe here." The driver relaxed slightly, not knowing why he suddenly felt protected, watched over, safe. Outside, the thing that had been following snarled and retreated back into the darkness. It knew better than to challenge the guardian of Crossroads. Thaddeus settled into his walls, his floors, his eternal watch. This was his existence now. Not life, not death, but something in between. A father's love made manifest in wood and stone and light. He thought about Katie, probably asleep in her dorm room, safe and unaware. He thought about all the travelers he'd protected, all the ones he would protect in the years to come. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was a purpose worth having. The night stretched on, full of dangers and possibilities. And Thaddeus Grimshaw, who had once been a trucker afraid of stopping at the wrong place, had become the right place for others to stop. He kept the lights on. He kept the coffee hot. He kept the darkness at bay. And somewhere out there his daughter drove safely through the night, protected by a love that transcended death itself. That was enough. It had to be. Josiah Darkmore first noticed the headlights in his mirrors somewhere outside of Beckley, West Virginia. It was nearing midnight on a Thursday, the kind of nothing special night that truckers lived through thousands of times without incident. He was hauling steel beams from Pittsburgh to Atlanta, a regular run he'd been doing twice a month for the past 3 years. The load was heavy but legal, his paperwork was in order, and he had plenty of hours left on his electronic log. The vehicle behind him wasn't unusual at first. Just another set of headlights on I-77 southbound, maintaining a respectful distance, neither crowding nor lagging. Could have been anyone. Another trucker, a family on vacation, a salesman heading home. Josiah didn't give it much thought beyond the automatic awareness all drivers develop for the traffic around them. But after 20 miles, it was still there. Same distance, same lane position, same steady pace that matched his exactly. That was odd, but not alarming. Sometimes vehicles naturally fell into sync on long stretches of highway, especially late at night when the road hypnotized you into a rhythm. Josiah varied his speed slightly, dropped to 65, pushed up to 72. The headlights behind him matched every change, maintaining that exact 3-second following distance. He changed lanes, moving from right to center to pass a slower vehicle. The follower changed lanes at precisely the same spot, as if following invisible tracks Josiah had laid down. Coincidence, he muttered to himself, but his hands had tightened on the wheel. At exit 48, he decided to test it. Without signaling, he veered toward the off-ramp at the last second, the kind of move that would have sent any normal following vehicle sailing past. But the headlights behind him swerved too, following him onto the ramp with perfect precision. Josiah's mouth went dry. He pulled into the first gas station he saw, a well-lit shell with several other vehicles at the pumps. The follower pulled in too, but parked at the edge of the lot, engine running, lights still on. Now he could see it clearly for the first time. It was a sedan, dark blue or black, one of those anonymous models that could have been a Toyota or Honda or Hyundai, the kind of car designed to be forgotten. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. The license plate was muddy, unreadable. Josiah sat in his cab for a full minute watching. The sedan didn't move. Nobody got out. It just sat there, idling, waiting. He climbed down from his truck, making a show of checking his tires, stretching his back, all while keeping the sedan in his peripheral vision. When he walked toward the store, he saw the driver's door of the sedan open slightly, then close again, like someone had started to get out, then changed their mind. Inside the store, Josiah bought coffee he didn't want and a bag of chips he wouldn't eat. The clerk, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Destiny, barely looked up from her phone. "That dark sedan," Josiah said, trying to sound casual. "It come through here often?" Destiny glanced toward the window. "What sedan?" Josiah looked. The parking lot was empty except for his truck and a minivan at pump 3. The sedan was gone. Never mind. He walked back to his truck, scanning the area. No sign of the vehicle. Maybe he'd been imagining things. Too many hours on the road could make you paranoid. See patterns that weren't there. He pulled back onto the highway, merged into traffic, and settled back into his rhythm. 5 miles later, he checked his mirrors. The headlights were back. Same distance, same position. This time, a cold sweat broke out on his neck. He grabbed his CB radio. "Breaker, breaker. This is Steel Horse southbound on 77 near mile marker 54. Anyone else seeing this dark sedan playing games?" Static, then a voice, gravelly and amused. "What kind of games, Steel Horse?" "Following too close, matching speeds. Real suspicious-like." "Don't see nothing behind you, driver. Road looks clear from where I'm sitting." Josiah checked his mirrors again. The headlights were there, plain as day. "You sure? Dark sedan, maybe blue or black, about 3 seconds behind me?" "I'm looking right at you, Steel Horse. You're running solo. Nothing behind you but empty asphalt." The voice belonged to another trucker somewhere nearby. Maybe ahead, maybe behind. But if he could see Josiah's truck, he should be able to see the sedan too, unless there was no sedan, unless Josiah was having some kind of episode. He'd heard about it happening. Drivers who'd been on the road too long started seeing things. Shadow vehicles, ghost trucks, the mind playing tricks when you'd been staring at highway lines for too many hours. But when he looked in the mirror again, the headlights were still there. Real as anything. He could see the glare reflecting off his trailer, could see the slight bounce as the vehicle hit the same pothole he'd just passed. "Thanks anyway," he told the CB voice and hung up the mic. The sedan followed him for another 30 miles. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. One moment the headlights were there, the next his mirrors showed only darkness. No exit taken, no slowing down, no pulling off. Just there, then not. Josiah's hands were shaking as he pulled into a rest area. He needed to walk, to clear his head, to figure out what was happening. The rest area was moderately busy. A few trucks, some cars, an RV with Iowa plates. Normal, safe. He used the restroom, splashed cold water on his face, bought a fresh coffee from a vending machine. When he returned to his truck, there was something under his windshield wiper. A photograph. His blood turned to ice as he pulled it free. It was a picture of his truck, taken from behind, from the exact angle the sedan had been following. The timestamp in the corner showed 11:47 p.m., 20 minutes ago, while he'd been driving. While the sedan had been behind him, he flipped it over. On the back, in neat handwriting, "You're carrying something that doesn't belong to you." Josiah looked around wildly, but the rest area was quiet. No dark sedan, no one watching, just travelers going about their business. He thought about his load. Steel beams, nothing special. He'd picked them up from the same facility he always did, loaded by the same crew, sealed with the same protocols. The manifest was standard, the weight was right. What could someone think he was carrying? His phone rang. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Josiah Darkmore. The voice was neutral, neither male nor female, processed through something that made it sound artificial. "You need to pull over and check your load." "Who is this?" "Check your load, Mr. Darkmore. Middle section, behind the third beam from the front." "I'm not opening my trailer on the say-so of, the sedan will follow you until you do. Every mile, every stop. And if you reach Atlanta with the cargo still hidden, things will become significantly more complicated for everyone involved." The line went dead. Josiah stood there in the pool of light from the rest area's floods, phone in one hand, photograph in the other. Every instinct told him to ignore it, to get back on the road, to deliver his load and forget this night had ever happened. But he knew the sedan would be waiting, knew those headlights would appear in his mirrors the moment he merged back onto the highway. He walked to the back of his trailer. The seal was intact, numbered and logged just as it should be. Breaking it meant paperwork, explanations, potential delays. But not breaking it meant driving the rest of the way to Atlanta with that thing following him, with the mystery of what was hidden in his load eating at him. He cut the seal. The trailer doors swung open, revealing neatly stacked steel beams, secured with chains and straps exactly as they should be. He climbed up, flashlight in hand, and made his way to the middle section. Third beam from the front. He shone his light behind it. There was a gap between the beams that shouldn't have been there, and wedged in that gap was a metal case about the size of a briefcase, sealed with electronic locks that blinked red in the darkness. Josiah's first thought was drugs. His second was weapons. His third was that he was being set up, that this was some elaborate frame job, and any second now law enforcement would swarm the rest area. But no one came. The rest area remained quiet except for the distant sound of traffic on the highway. He tried to pull the case free, but it was wedged tight. It would take tools, time, maybe help to extract it. As he was considering his options, his phone rang again. Same, unknown number. "Leave it," the voice said as soon as he answered. "Now that you know it's there, our business is concluded. Deliver your load as normal. Someone will retrieve the case in Atlanta." "I'm not trafficking whatever this is." "You already are. You have been for 3 years, Mr. Darkmore, twice a month. Regular as clockwork. This is just the first time we've had to make you aware of it." Josiah's legs went weak. 3 years. Every load he'd carried on this route for 3 years had been compromised? "We've never had a problem before," the voice continued. "You've been an excellent, unwitting courier. But this time, someone else knows. Someone who wants what's in that case." The sedan isn't ours. Then whose? He heard it before he saw it. The distinctive rumble of a modified engine. He turned to see the dark sedan pulling into the rest area, moving slowly, prowling like a predator that had cornered its prey. "Mr. Darkmore," the voice on the phone said urgently. "Close the trailer. Get in your truck. Drive. Now." The sedan parked directly behind Josiah's trailer, blocking him in. The engine died. The lights went out. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, all 4 doors opened at once, and 4 men stepped out. They were dressed identically, dark suits that looked wrong somehow, cut in a style that was neither modern nor vintage, but something in between. Their faces were obscured by the shadows, but Josiah could see they were all looking directly at him. "The case, Mr. Darkmore," one of them said. His voice was cultured, refined, with an accent Josiah couldn't place. "We'll be taking it now." "I don't know what you're talking about." The man who'd spoken, Josiah would later learn his name was Mordecai Ashworth, smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Of course you do. You just looked at it. We watched you find it, examine it, consider your options. Now you're going to hand it over, and we'll all go our separate ways. And if I don't..." Mordecai tilted his head. "Have you ever seen what happens to a human body when it's exposed to certain frequencies of sound? Frequencies below the range of hearing, but perfectly capable of liquefying internal organs. It's quite fascinating from a scientific perspective. Less so from the victims." One of the other men pulled something from his jacket. It looked like a tuning fork, but larger, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. "That's impossible," Josiah said, but his voice shook. "Many things are impossible, Mr. Darkmore. That doesn't stop them from happening." Mordecai took a step forward. "The case? Now." Josiah's phone buzzed in his hand. A text this time. "Stall them. Help is coming." Help from whom? The people who'd been using him as an unwitting drug mule for 3 years? But what choice did he have? "The case is wedged tight," Josiah said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It'll take tools to get it out. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Mordecai Ashworth studied him with eyes that reflected the rest area's lights like a cat's. "You have 5 minutes. "That's not..." The man with the tuning fork struck it against the side of the trailer. The sound it produced wasn't heard so much as felt. A vibration that went through Josiah's bones, made his teeth ache, his vision blur. His knees buckled and he had to grab the trailer door to stay upright. 5 minutes, Mordecai repeated. Josiah climbed back into the trailer, mind racing. He had no tools that could extract the case quickly. His phone showed no new messages. Whatever help was supposedly coming, it wasn't here yet. He made a show of trying to shift the beams, grunting with effort, buying time. Through the open trailer doors, he could see the 4 men standing in a semicircle, patient as tombstones. Other travelers passed by, heading to and from the restroom facilities, but none of them seemed to notice anything unusual, like the men in suits were invisible to everyone but Josiah. 4 minutes, Mordecai called out. That's when Josiah heard another engine. Not the distinctive rumble of the sedan, but something bigger. A truck pulling into the rest area fast, air brakes hissing as it stopped just beyond the circle of men. The driver's door opened and out stepped Ezra Nightingale. Josiah had met Ezra exactly once, 3 months ago, at a truck stop outside of Charlotte. They'd had coffee together, talked about routes and weather and nothing important. Ezra had seemed like just another driver, mid-50s, graying beard, Carolina Panthers cap, wedding ring worn thin from years of use, but the man who stepped out of that truck now looked different. Same face, same clothes, but he moved with purpose, with authority, and the 4 men in suits all turned to face him immediately. like they recognized a threat. "Gentlemen," Ezra said pleasantly, "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Mordecai replied. "The case belongs to us. We're simply recovering stolen property." "Stolen?" Ezra laughed. "That's rich, coming from you. How many years did you work for the company before you went rogue? 5? 6? The company lost its way. We're simply continuing the original mission. The original mission didn't involve threatening innocent truckers at rest stops." Josiah climbed down from the trailer, completely lost. "Can someone please tell me what the hell is going on?" Ezra glanced at him. "Short version, you've been transporting something valuable. Something that multiple parties want. The company, my employer, has been using your regular route to move it safely. These gentlemen used to work for the company but had a philosophical disagreement about how certain assets should be used. What's in the case? Nothing that concerns you, and everything that concerns you." Ezra's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this, Josiah. We tried to keep you insulated." 3 years, Josiah said. 3 years I've been carrying... What, drugs? Weapons? "Information," Mordecai said. "The most dangerous weapon of all. Specifically, information about people like us. People who can do things that shouldn't be possible." He held up the tuning fork device. "This is just a toy compared to what some of us can do. The company has been cataloging us for decades. Names, abilities, weaknesses. The case contains a drive with everything. And you want it why? Because we're tired of being cataloged, controlled, used as assets instead of treated as people." Mordecai's voice had taken on an edge of genuine emotion. "The company talks about protection, about keeping the world safe from us. But really, they're just another form of prison." "Prison?" Ezra stepped forward. "We gave you purpose, training, control over abilities that were destroying you. You gave us leashes, and now we're cutting them." The air between the two groups had grown thick with tension. Josiah could feel it, like the moment before lightning strikes. He started backing away slowly, but Mordecai's attention snapped to him. "The case, Mr. Darkmoor, now, or things get unpleasant for everyone here." "Josiah," Ezra said calmly, "get in your truck and drive away. We'll handle this." "He's not going anywhere," Mordecai said. One of his men moved to block Josiah's path to the truck cab. That's when things went wrong. The man with the tuning fork struck it again, but this time Ezra was ready. He pulled something from his pocket, a small silver disc, and threw it. The disc hit the tuning fork mid-vibration and both objects shattered, producing a sound like breaking glass mixed with screaming metal. Everyone in the rest area turned to look, confusion on their faces. Whatever invisibility had been protecting the confrontation was broken. "Run!" Ezra shouted at Josiah. Josiah ran, but not to his truck. The men had it surrounded. Instead, he sprinted toward the restroom facilities, hoping to find another exit, other people, safety in numbers. Behind him, he heard sounds that didn't make sense. A crack like thunder with no lightning. A hiss like air escaping from a massive tire. Someone screaming in a language he didn't recognize. He burst into the men's room. Empty. He ran to the far wall, looking for a window, another door, anything. Nothing. Just a concrete box with one way in and out. Footsteps at the entrance. Slow, measured. Mordecai appeared in the doorway, his suit rumpled. A trickle of blood running from his nose. "That was poorly done, Mr. Darkmoor. Now Ezra and my men are having a disagreement, and people are getting hurt. All because you couldn't simply hand over something that was never yours to begin with. I don't even know where it is anymore. The trailer, is exactly where you left it, along with the case, which I'm now going to retrieve with or without your cooperation." He pulled something from his jacket, not a weapon, but a photograph. "Recognize her?" Josiah's heart stopped. It was his daughter, Melanie, 22 years old, graduate student at Georgia State. The photo showed her walking across campus, unaware she was being photographed. "You son of a..." She has a lovely apartment, ground floor. The lock on her sliding glass door has been broken for 2 weeks. She keeps meaning to get it fixed. Mordecai's expression was cold. "My associates in Atlanta are waiting for my call. If I don't make that call in the next 10 minutes, they'll pay her a visit." "You're bluffing." Mordecai pulled out his phone, dialed, put it on speaker. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Status?" "Put her on," Mordecai said. There was rustling, then Melanie's voice, confused and frightened. "Hello? Who is this? What's happening?" Josiah lunged forward, but Mordecai stepped back, ending the call. "She's unharmed, for now. The case, Mr. Darkmore." They walked back out together, Josiah in front, Mordecai behind. The rest area was in chaos. People were standing around filming with their phones, pointing at scorch marks on the asphalt that hadn't been there before. One of the men in suits was on the ground, not moving. Another was limping toward the sedan. The third was nowhere to be seen. Ezra was leaning against his truck, holding his ribs, blood on his shirt. He saw Josiah and shook his head slightly. A warning or an apology, Josiah couldn't tell. At the trailer, Josiah climbed up and wrestled with the beams, using adrenaline-fueled strength to shift them just enough. The case came free, heavier than its size suggested. He carried it to the edge and looked down at Mordecai. "Let my daughter go first. After I verify the contents. Now, or I throw it into traffic." They were at an impasse. Mordecai with his phone, ready to make a call that would destroy Josiah's world. Josiah with the case, ready to destroy whatever plans Mordecai had. That's when the state troopers arrived. 3 cars, lights blazing, officers emerging with hands on weapons. Someone had called 911 about a disturbance. Normal law enforcement responding to what they thought was a normal situation. Mordecai's expression didn't change, but Josiah saw him calculate odds, options, outcomes. With witnesses and cameras and law enforcement, the situation had become untenable. "This isn't over," Mordecai said quietly, then walked calmly to the sedan. His remaining men were already inside. They pulled away smoothly, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just threatened everything Josiah cared about. The lead trooper approached. "Sir, I need you to step down from the vehicle." Josiah climbed down, still holding the case. His hands were shaking. "Officer, Josiah!" Ezra had walked over, moving stiffly. He held up a federal badge Josiah couldn't read from this distance. "Agent Ezra Nightingale, NSA. This is a matter of national security. I need to speak with your supervisor." The trooper looked skeptical but pulled out his radio. While he talked, Ezra moved closer to Josiah. "Your daughter's safe," he said quietly. "We had people watching her apartment the moment Mordecai's team showed up. She's being moved to a secure location as we speak." "You knew? You knew they'd threaten her?" "We suspected. Mordecai's predictable in his methods. Family leverage is his favorite tool." Ezra held out his hand. "The case, Josiah." "Please. What happens to me? My daughter? You go back to your life, both of you. We'll ensure Mordecai and his people never bother you again." "How can you guarantee that?" "Because after tonight, they'll have bigger problems than one missing case. This was a trap, Josiah. The case is real, yes, but it's also bait. Every member of Mordecai's rogue cell showed themselves tonight. We've been tracking them for months, and now we know exactly who they are, where they operate, who they work with. Josiah handed over the case. It felt like surrendering a burden he'd never asked to carry. Ezra took it carefully. There's a clean truck waiting for you at the next rest area south. Your load will be transferred. You'll deliver empty beams to Atlanta, collect your payment, and forget this ever happened. Can I forget, I mean? That's up to you, but I'd recommend trying. Ezra paused. For what it's worth, you handled yourself well tonight. Most people would have panicked. I did panic. But you didn't break. That matters. The state troopers were finishing up, taking statements from witnesses that Ezra's federal authority would later make disappear. The rest area was slowly returning to normal, though people still clustered in groups, sharing videos, trying to make sense of what they'd seen. Josiah climbed into his truck, started the engine. In his mirrors, he could see Ezra talking to the troopers, the case at his feet. No sign of the dark sedan, no mysterious headlights. He pulled out onto the highway heading south. 5 miles later, his phone rang. Melanie. Dad, something really weird just happened. These federal agents showed up and said I had to come with them, something about a security threat. They won't tell me anything else. Are you okay? I'm fine, just confused. They're putting me in a hotel for the night. Dad, what's going on? I don't know, sweetheart. Just do what they say. Stay safe. I'll call you tomorrow. Dad, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. Everything's going to be okay. He hoped that wasn't a lie. The promised clean truck was waiting at the next rest area. A professional crew transferred the steel beams, just beams now, no hidden cargo, in under 20 minutes. Josiah continued south in the new vehicle, checking his mirrors obsessively. Nothing followed him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Mordecai had said as much. And men like that, men who could do impossible things, who threatened daughters and moved through the world like ghosts, they didn't give up easily. The next 3 weeks passed in a haze of paranoia. Josiah completed his delivery to Atlanta without incident. The steel beams were unloaded by the usual crew, who acted like nothing was different. His payment was processed normally. The dispatcher gave him his next assignment, a load of automotive parts from Birmingham to Memphis. No Pittsburgh to Atlanta road. No mention of why the regular run had been canceled. Melanie had been released from protective custody after 48 hours. The federal agents told her it had been a case of mistaken identity, apologized for the inconvenience, and gave her a number to call if she noticed anything unusual. She'd called Josiah angry and confused, demanding explanations he couldn't give. I don't know what you're involved in, Dad, but you need to fix it, she'd said. I can't live like this, looking over my shoulder, wondering if those people are coming back. He'd promised her it was over. Another lie to add to the pile. Because it wasn't over. He could feel it in the way certain cars lingered too long behind him on the highway, in the way his phone would ring with dead air on the other end, in the way he'd catch glimpses of men in dark suits at truck stops, always at the edge of his vision, always gone when he looked directly. Ezra had given him a card with just a phone number. If you see them again, call immediately. Josiah had called 3 times. Each time, Ezra assured him they were monitoring the situation, that Mordecai's group was being handled, that Josiah was safe. But Josiah didn't feel safe. It was a Tuesday night when everything came to a head. He was hauling produce from Florida to Chicago, passing through Tennessee on I-75. It was raining, that steady downpour that turns highways into rivers and makes every mile feel like 10. Traffic was light. Most smart drivers had pulled off to wait out the weather. He should have done the same. But he was behind schedule, and the thought of sitting still, vulnerable in some parking lot made his skin crawl. So he pushed on, wipers on high. Speed dropped to 45, hands tight on the wheel. The headlights appeared in his mirrors near Knoxville. Not the sedan this time. Something bigger. An SUV maybe, or a large pickup. It maintained that familiar distance, that perfect synchronization with his movements. Josiah reached for his phone, then stopped. What would he tell Ezra? That he was being followed again? That he needed help again? How many times could he cry wolf before they stopped responding? He decided to handle it himself. There was a way station ahead, closed at this hour but well lit with security cameras. He'd pull in, force a confrontation in a place with evidence, witnesses if any other trucks were parked there. The wage station was empty except for a single rig parked at the far end. Lights off, probably a driver sleeping. Josiah pulled in and stopped under the brightest lights he could find. The following vehicle pulled in too, but stayed back, engine running. Josiah grabbed his tire iron and climbed out into the rain. It soaked through his jacket immediately, cold and heavy. He walked toward the waiting vehicle, anger overriding fear. "What do you want?" he shouted. "I don't have anything. The case is gone. Leave me alone." The vehicle's door opened, but it wasn't Mordecai who stepped out. It was Ezra Nightingale. "Josiah," he said, rain streaming down his face, "we need to talk." "You? You've been following me?" "Not following, protecting. Mordecai's team hasn't given up. They're planning something, and we think you're still the target." "Why? I don't have anything they want." "No, but you know things. You've seen their faces. You could identify them. And Mordecai, he takes betrayal personally, even perceived betrayal. I didn't betray anyone. I was just trying to do my job." "I know. But in his mind, you chose sides when you handed me the case. That makes you an enemy." They stood there in the rain, two men in an empty way station, discussing impossibilities like they were normal. "So what now?" Josiah asked. "I just keep running? Keep looking over my shoulder forever?" "No, we're going to end this. Tonight." Ezra gestured to his vehicle. "Get in. There's something you need to see." Against his better judgment, Josiah climbed into the SUV. It was warm, dry, filled with electronic equipment he didn't recognize. Screens showed various camera feeds, highways, truck stops, what looked like satellite imagery. "Mordecai's group has a base of operations," Ezra explained, pointing to one screen showing an abandoned warehouse complex. "We've known about it for weeks but couldn't move without cause. Now we have it. They're planning to kidnap you tomorrow night." "What?" "You're scheduled to pass through a specific stretch of I-40 around midnight. They've prepared an ambush. Fake construction zone, detour signs, the works. They plan to force you off the road, take you to this warehouse and—" Ezra paused. "Extract information they think you have. Information I don't have. They don't know that or don't care. Mordecai's convinced you saw something in that case, something before I arrived. He thinks you're hiding crucial data. So cancel my run. I'll stay home." "No, you'll make the run as scheduled, but you won't be alone." Ezra pulled up another screen showing a map with the multiple colored dots. "These are our assets, agents and vehicles ahead and behind you. Air support on standby. When Mordecai's team makes their move, we'll be ready." "You're using me as bait. Yes, I won't lie to you, Josiah. There's risk involved, but it's the only way to end this definitively. To ensure they never come after you or your daughter again." Josiah stared at the screens, at the preparation, the coordination. And if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, Ezra met his eyes. Then we'll do everything in our power to protect you. You have my word. The word of a federal agent who'd been lying to him for 3 years, who'd used his truck to transport mysterious cargo without his knowledge, who'd put him and his daughter in danger. But what choice did he have? Fine, Josiah said. But I have conditions. Name them. My daughter gets protection. Real protection, not just surveillance. I want agents with her until this is over. Done. And when it's finished, when Mordecai's captured or whatever, I want out, completely. New routes that don't go through Pittsburgh or Atlanta. No more cargo I don't know about. No more involvement with any of this. Agreed. And I want compensation. For 3 years of unwitting service. For the danger to me and my family. Enough to make this worthwhile. Ezra smiled slightly. How much? $250,000. Done. Too easy. He'd agreed too quickly, which meant either the government had deep pockets for situations like this, or Ezra didn't expect Josiah to survive to collect. They sat in silence for a moment, rain drumming on the roof. The things Mordecai can do, Josiah said finally. The impossible things. Are there really people like that? More than you'd think. They're rare, but they exist. People who can manipulate sound waves, alter perceptions, move through spaces that shouldn't exist. The company tries to find them, train them, give them purpose. Sometimes it works, sometimes... He gestured vaguely. Sometimes you get Mordecai. What can he do specifically? He's a probability manipulator. He can alter the likelihood of events in small ways. Make unlikely things happen. Likely things fail. It's why he's so hard to catch. Every time we think we have him, something goes wrong. Equipment fails, people miss. Coincidences pile up in his favor. That's terrifying. It's also limited. He can only affect things within a certain range, and it exhausts him. Push him hard enough, long enough, and he's just a man. A man who threatened my daughter. Yes. And for that alone, he needs to be stopped. Josiah returned to his truck, and Ezra followed him back onto the highway. They drove in tandem for 50 miles before Ezra took an exit, disappearing into the night. But Josiah knew he was still out there, along with others, watching, waiting. The next evening, Josiah loaded his truck with textiles bound for Chicago. Soft cargo, nothing that could be used as a weapon, nothing that could hide a case or anything else. He did his pre-trip inspection more carefully than ever, checking for tracking devices, tampering, anything unusual. Nothing. Just a truck and its driver heading into a trap. He pulled out of the depot at 8 p.m., merging onto I-40 westbound as the sun set behind the mountains. Traffic was moderate, normal. In his mirrors, he spotted what might have been surveillance vehicles, but they kept their distance, blended with the flow. His phone, mounted on the dashboard, showed a text from Ezra. "We're with you." Mile by mile, the sun disappeared and darkness settled over the highway. Josiah found himself checking the clock obsessively. 11:30, 11:45. Midnight approached like a dental appointment, inevitable and unpleasant. At 11:55, he saw the signs. Construction ahead. Reduce speed. Merge left. But Ezra had shown him the real construction schedule. There was nothing planned for this stretch of road. Orange cones appeared, funneling traffic into a single lane. Except there was no traffic. The vehicles that had been around him had all exited or disappeared. He was alone on a stretch of highway that should have been busy even at this hour. The detour sign appeared exactly where Ezra said it would be. Exit here. Follow detour. An arrow pointing to an off-ramp that led into darkness. Josiah's hands tightened on the wheel. Every instinct screamed at him to keep driving, to blast through the cones and stay on the highway. But that wasn't the plan. He took the exit. The ramp led to a service road that wasn't on any map he'd ever seen. Fresh asphalt, no lines painted yet. It curved away from the highway, leading toward a cluster of buildings that looked abandoned even from a distance. The warehouse complex. Mordecai's trap. Josiah's phone buzzed. 2 minutes out, keep going. He kept going. The road led directly to the complex's main gate, which stood open. Security lights that should have been blazing were dark. The only illumination came from his headlights cutting through the darkness. He pulled into the complex, stopped in the middle of the main yard. Warehouses surrounded him on 3 sides. The gate he'd entered through was the only exit, and it swung closed behind him. The headlights hit him from all directions at once. Vehicles hidden in the warehouse bays suddenly blazed to life, blinding him. He counted at least 6, all positioned to prevent escape. His phone was dead. No signal, no power, like it had been switched off remotely. Car doors opened. Men emerged. Mordecai Ashworth walked out of the largest warehouse, no longer in a suit but in tactical gear that made him look military. "Mr. Darkmore," he called out. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Josiah climbed out of his truck, hands visible, trying to look more confused than terrified. "What is this? Where's the detour?" "There is no detour, just a conversation we need to have." Mordecai walked closer, his men flanking him. "You're going to tell us everything about the case. What you saw, what you read, what Ezra told you. I didn't see anything. It was locked. Electronic locks record access attempts. The case was opened 17 minutes before you handed it to Ezra. You saw what was inside. That was impossible. Josiah hadn't opened it, hadn't even tried. But arguing seemed pointless. "Where's your backup?" Mordecai asked suddenly, looking around. "Where's Ezra and his team? I don't know what you're talking about." Mordecai smiled coldly. "Of course you don't. You think they're coming to save you. But here's the thing about probability manipulation. I can make unlikely things happen. Like all of Ezra's vehicles developing simultaneous mechanical problems. Like their communications failing at crucial moments. Like every traffic light between here and there turning red." He pulled out a device that looked like a militarized smartphone. "They're still 15 minutes out, more than enough time for us to have our conversation and leave." "I don't know anything." "Then we'll have to help you remember." 2 of Mordecai's men moved forward, one carrying what looked like a medical kit, the other holding restraints. That's when the lights went out. Not just the vehicle headlights. Everything. Even the stars seemed to dim. The darkness was absolute, impenetrable. "What?" Mordecai's voice, surprised for the first time. A new voice spoke from the darkness, calm, measured, familiar. "Hello, Mordecai." Josiah recognized it. The gas station attendant from 3 months ago, the one Ezra had interviewed. "Silas?" Mordecai sounded uncertain. "Silas Coldwell, you're dead. Death is negotiable in places like this." A light appeared, not electric, but something older, like Foxfire or St. Elmo's fire. It illuminated Silas Coldwell, but not the Silas that Josiah remembered. This version was younger, stronger, wearing clothes from a different era entirely. "You've been very busy," Silas said to Mordecai. "Threatening innocent people, playing with forces you don't understand, making enemies of those who should be allies. The company sent you? The company doesn't know I exist. None of them do. I'm something older, something that predates their files and categories." Silas walked forward, the strange light moving with him. "I'm what happens when someone dies in a place of power and chooses to stay." "That's impossible," Mordecai said. but his voice had lost its confidence. Ghosts aren't real. The dead don't come back. Tell that to the 17 people you've killed over the years, Silas replied. They'd disagree. In fact, they're here now. Would you like to meet them? The strange light around Silas expanded, and in it, Josiah could see shapes. Human shapes, translucent and wrong, all staring at Mordecai with hollow eyes. One was a young woman in a business suit, her neck bent at an impossible angle. Another was an older man in trucker's clothes, a dark stain spreading across his chest. A teenager, couldn't have been more than 16, stood among them with half his face missing. Mordecai's men raised their weapons, but Silas laughed. Bullets? Really? You can't kill what's already dead. You're not dead, Mordecai insisted, though he'd taken a step back. You're something else, another company experiment. Another trick. No trick, just consequence. Silas turned to Josiah. You should leave now. This is about to become unpleasant. I can't. The gate behind them creaked open on its own, metal groaning as if pushed by invisible hands. But as it opened, Josiah saw something that made his blood freeze. More figures were entering through the gate, but these weren't ghosts. They were solid, real, wearing uniforms from different eras. A police officer from the 1970s, a security guard from the 1990s, a truck driver from just last year. My friends, Silas explained casually. Others who died because of men like Mordecai. They've been waiting for this. Go, Silas said to Josiah. Ezra's team will be here soon, but you don't want to be here for what happens next. Josiah started toward his truck, but Mordecai shouted, Stop him! He knows too much! Two of Mordecai's men moved to block the truck, but the shadows around them suddenly solidified, became hands, dozens of them, pulling the men down. They screamed, fighting against things that shouldn't exist. One man's weapon discharged, the muzzle flash illuminating faces in the darkness. So many faces, all bearing the wounds that had killed them. Josiah climbed into his truck, hands shaking as he turned the key. The engine turned over once, twice, then died. No, 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 he muttered, trying again. Nothing. Through the windshield he could see Mordecai backing away from Silas, his hands moving in strange patterns. The air around him shimmered, probability bending to his will. 3 of the ghost figures suddenly flickered and disappeared. Impressive, Silas said. But you can't alter the probability of something that's already happened. Death is the ultimate certainty. Everything's uncertain, Mordecai snarled. Even death. Watch. He pulled something from his tactical vest, a device that looked like a cross between a grenade and a tuning fork. When he activated it, it produced a sound that wasn't quite sound, a vibration that made reality itself seem to hiccup. The ghosts screamed, their forms wavering, some disappearing entirely. Even Silas stepped back, his light dimming. Quantum destabilizer, Mordecai said, confidence returning. Borrowed from the company's black projects, disrupts any energy pattern, living or dead. He turned to Josiah's truck. Now, Mr. Darkmoor, let's continue our conversation. The truck's engine suddenly roared to life, but Josiah hadn't turned the key. He looked at the ignition and saw a translucent hand there, turning it. In the passenger seat, barely visible, sat a figure in a baseball cap. The ghost looked at him and winked, then faded. Josiah didn't question it. He threw the truck in gear and floored it toward the gate. Behind him, he heard Mordecai curse, heard the strange knot sound of the destabilizer firing again. His rearview mirror exploded, showering him with glass. He made it through the gate onto the service road but could hear vehicles starting behind him. Mordecai's men, the ones not being pulled into the shadows, were giving chase. The service road was narrow, not designed for a full-sized rig at high speed. Josiah's trailer fishtailed, clipping trees on both sides. In his remaining mirror, he could see headlights gaining. Then, impossibly, one set of headlights simply went out. The vehicle behind it swerved, crashed into the woods. More ghosts, Josiah realized. They were affecting the pursuing vehicles, causing failures, creating accidents, protecting him. He reached the connection to the highway just as Ezra's convoy arrived. 3 SUVs and a helicopter overhead, spotlight blazing. But they didn't stop for him. They blew past, heading toward the warehouse complex and whatever impossible battle was happening there. Josiah merged onto the empty highway, pushing the truck as hard as he dared. 5 miles, 10. His phone, dead since entering the complex, suddenly buzzed back to life. Dozens of missed calls, all from Ezra. It rang immediately. Ezra's voice tense. "Josiah, where are you? Highway, heading west. What the hell? Keep driving. Don't stop for anything. There's a rest area in 30 miles. State police are waiting. Get there." "What about Mordecai?" "We're handling it." But behind Ezra's voice, Josiah could hear chaos. Gunfire, screaming. And underneath it all, that terrible knot sound of the quantum destabilizer. The line went dead. Josiah drove, checking his mirrors obsessively. 20 miles to the rest area. 15. 10. That's when he saw them. Headlights, approaching fast from behind. Not multiple vehicles, just one. Moving impossibly fast. Faster than any normal car should be able to go. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, already knowing who it would be. "Did you think it would be that easy?" Mordecai's voice, rough but alive. "Did you think some ghosts and federal agents could stop me?" "How?" "Probability, Mr. Darkmoor. I make the impossible possible. My escape was unlikely, but I made it certain. Just like your capture is certain, no matter how fast you drive." The headlights were closer now. Josiah could see it was the dark sedan from that first night. But it was wrong, somehow. It moved too smoothly, took curves without slowing, like physics didn't apply to it. 5 miles to the rest area. "You know what I can do to probability," Mordecai continued. "I can make your engine fail, make your tires blow, make you fall asleep at the wheel, or I can make something else happen, something worse." "Like what?" "Like your daughter having an accident, right now, a gas leak in her apartment that she won't smell until it's too late. Unless you pull over." Josiah's hands tightened on the wheel. "You're bluffing. You're nowhere near her. I don't need to be. Probability doesn't care about distance. Watch." Josiah's phone screen changed, showing a video feed. Melanie's apartment. She was at her desk, studying, headphones on. Behind her, barely visible, the stove's gas knob was turning. Slowly, by itself. "Stop!" "Pull over." 3 miles to the rest area. He could see lights ahead, multiple vehicles. Safety. But Melanie, that's when something hit the sedan from the side. Not another vehicle, something else. The sedan swerved, fishtailed, but kept coming. In the brief moment of impact, Josiah had seen what hit it. A truck, a semi, translucent and impossible, driven by someone who'd been dead for years. More ghost trucks materialized from nothing, surrounding the sedan, boxing it in. The sedan tried to swerve around them, but they matched its movements perfectly. Dead truckers protecting a living one. Josiah's phone screen flickered. The gas knob in Melanie's apartment stopped turning, then reversed, closing completely. "Impossible," Mordecai's voice furious now. "Nothing's impossible," a new voice said through the phone. "Silas, you said so yourself." The rest area was just ahead. Josiah could see state police cars, lights flashing, officers with weapons drawn. He pulled in hard, brakes screaming, and stopped in the middle of a circle of protection. Behind him, the sedan tried to follow, but the ghost trucks blocked it, forced it to stop. Mordecai got out, the quantum destabilizer in his hand, and fired it at the translucent vehicles. They flickered, but didn't disappear. "That won't work anymore," Silas said, appearing beside Mordecai as if he'd always been there. "You can disrupt energy patterns, but we're not energy. We're memory. We're consequence. We're every life you've ended, every future you've stolen." More figures surrounded Mordecai. Not just his victims now, but others. Hundreds of them. Every person who'd died on this stretch of highway over the decades. Truckers, families, traveling salesmen. All the souls tied to this road. "The dead own the highways at night," Silas said. "We've been here long before you, and we'll be here long after. You threatened one of ours." "He's not dead." "No, but he's a trucker, and we protect our own." The state police were advancing now, weapons drawn, shouting commands, but they stopped when they saw what was happening. Even hardened officers weren't prepared for the sight of hundreds of ghosts surrounding a single man. Mordecai raised the destabilizer again, but his hand was shaking. The device was flickering, its power failing. Probability manipulation required focus, and fear destroyed focus. "You want to know what's really improbable?" Silas asked. "A man like you surviving what you've done. All those deaths, all that pain. The universe tends toward balance, Mordecai. And you've tipped the scales too far." The ghosts moved closer. Not touching him, not yet, but their presence was overwhelming. The air grew cold. Frost formed on the sedan's windows. Mordecai screamed, dropped the destabilizer, and fell to his knees. The ghosts didn't touch him, didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough. The weight of all those deaths, all that consequence, crushing down on one man's consciousness. When Ezra's team arrived 5 minutes later, they found Mordecai catatonic, eyes open but seeing nothing, whispering names. 17 names, over and over, the names of everyone he'd killed. The ghosts were gone. Only Silas remained, standing by Josiah's truck. "Thank you," Josiah said simply. "Don't thank me. Thank them." Silas gestured to the empty air where hundreds of spirits had been. The dead have long memories and longer reach. Mordecai forgot that. Will he recover? His body will. His mind? Silas shrugged. He's experiencing every death he caused from the victim's perspective, over and over. The doctors will call it a psychotic break. We call it justice. Ezra approached, looking haggard. Half his shirt was torn, and there was blood on his face, not his own, judging by how he moved. "Josiah, are you hurt?" "No. Your friends kept me safe." He nodded to where Silas had been, but the ghost was gone. "What friends?" "Never mind." They stood there in the rest area, surrounded by law enforcement and emergency vehicles, the dark sedan being loaded onto a flatbed, Mordecai being put into an ambulance in restraints. "It's over," Ezra said. "Really over this time. His entire network is done. You're safe." "What about the things he could do? The probability manipulation?" "Without focus, it's just chaos. And from what the medics are saying, he'll never focus again. Whatever happened to him in that warehouse, then here, it broke something fundamental. The ghosts happened." Ezra looked at him sharply. "There are no such things as ghosts. Keep telling yourself that." The next few hours were a blur of statements, paperwork, and medical checks. By dawn, Josiah was free to go, his truck released, his load somehow still intact despite everything. He drove toward Chicago, exhausted but unable to sleep. Every shadow could be a ghost. Every reflection could be Silas or one of the others. The world had become larger and stranger than he'd ever imagined. He delivered his load that afternoon. The warehouse workers unloaded the textiles without comment, business as usual. His dispatcher gave him his next assignment, then paused. "You okay, Darkmoor? You look like you've seen a ghost." Something like that. "Well, take a few days if you need them. Road's not going anywhere." But Josiah didn't want time off. He wanted to drive, to process everything on the open highway, where things made sense even when they didn't. He called Melanie from a truck stop that evening. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just wanted to hear your voice. You say that a lot lately." "I know. I realize how precious you are, how fragile life is. Dad, you're scaring me. Don't be scared, just be careful. Check your stove before bed, lock your doors, the usual stuff." "Okay. Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm good. Better than I've been in a while, actually. I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Dad." He hung up and sat in his cab, watching the sun set over the parking lot. Other truckers were pulling in for the night, doing their inspections, grabbing dinner. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of what moved in the shadows. A figure materialized in his passenger seat. Silas, translucent but clear. "You going to be a regular thing now?" Josiah asked. "Maybe. You've been marked by some pretty heavy stuff, might need checking on from time to time." "Marked? You said that before. What does it mean exactly?" "Means you've seen behind the curtain. Once you know what's really out there, you can't unknow it. You'll see things others don't. Hear things. Sometimes that's good. You'll spot danger before it strikes. Sometimes it's hard. You'll know how many ghosts ride these highways. How many? More than there are living drivers. Every person who's died on the road, some stay. Not all, but enough. We watch. We protect when we can. We remember. Why tell me this? Because you're one of us now. Not dead, but not entirely part of the living world either. You exist in between, like the highways themselves. Neither here nor there, always moving between places. That's depressing. It's freedom. You know the truth now. Most people live their whole lives never knowing what's real. You do. That's a gift, even if it doesn't feel like it. Silas started to fade. "Wait," Josiah said. "Will I see you again?" "Probably. The road's long and full of surprises. Some of them might need a dead trucker's help to handle. And if I need help, just call, not with a phone, with intent. The dead hear intent better than words. We'll come if we can." He was gone, leaving Josiah alone in his cab. But not really alone. Outside, in the growing darkness, he could see them now. Faint shapes moving between the trucks. Ghost drivers checking loads that didn't exist. Phantom families heading to rest stops they'd never reached. The shadow population of the highways, always present, rarely seen. His phone buzzed. A text from Ezra. "Funds transferred. New route assignments confirmed. Thank you for your service." $250,000, blood money or hazard pay. Or maybe just the government's way of buying his silence. Either way, it would secure Melanie's future, pay off his debts, give him options. But he knew he'd keep driving. It's what he was, what he did. And now, knowing what he knew, seeing what he could see, the road needed him more than ever. He pulled out of the truck stop as full dark settled over the highway. In his mirrors, he could see ghostly headlights, not following, but paralleling, keeping pace. The eternal convoy of the dead, riding alongside the living. Miles passed. The familiar rhythm of the road returned. But everything was different now. Every shadow had potential. Every reflection might reveal a truth. Every mile was shared with those who'd traveled it before and never left. At midnight, he stopped at another rest area. This one was older, more isolated. The kind of place he would have avoided before. But he wasn't afraid anymore. The dead were here, watching, protecting. He bought coffee from a vending machine that looked like it hadn't been serviced in years. The coffee was surprisingly fresh, hot, perfect. The machine's reflection showed someone standing behind it. Someone in a uniform from the 1960s, smiling. "Thanks," Josiah said to the empty air. "Welcome," the wind seemed to reply. He returned to his truck to find something on his windshield. Not a ticket or advertisement, but a photograph. Old, yellowed at the edges. It showed a group of truckers standing in front of their rigs. Maybe 30 years ago, their faces were clear, smiling, alive. He recognized some of them. The ghost truckers who'd saved him from Mordecai. In life, they'd been real people with real lives, real families. Now they were guardians of the highway, protecting those who came after. On the back of the photo, in handwriting that changed with each line, different people, different eras. "Welcome to the Brotherhood. Drive safe. Watch the shadows. Protect the innocent. Remember us." Josiah tucked the photo into his visor and pulled back onto the highway. The road stretched endlessly ahead, dark and full of possibility. But he wasn't afraid. He had protection. He had purpose. He had the entire brotherhood of dead truckers watching his back. Somewhere behind him, Mordecai was probably in a psychiatric ward, locked in his own mind with the ghosts of his victims. The company was probably filing reports, classifying the incident, pretending ghosts didn't exist. But Josiah knew the truth. The dead were real. They were here, and they were driving. He turned on the radio. Classic rock filled the cab, riders on the storm by the doors. Appropriate. He sang along, his voice mixing with static that might have been other voices, other drivers, other times. The miles rolled by. The ghost convoy kept pace. The living and the dead shared the highway in the darkness, each protecting the other from things that hunted in the spaces between destinations. This was his life now, marked by the impossible, protected by the dead, driving forever between worlds. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the one he'd been given. And somehow that was enough. The highway stretched on, infinite and dark. And Josiah Darkmore drove it with new understanding, new purpose, new eyes that saw not just the road, but all the souls that traveled it. He was never alone. None of them were. The dead rode with them all, keeping watch, keeping faith, keeping the darkness at bay. And the wheels kept turning, carrying their loads through the night, protected by the greatest union of all, the one between the living and the dead who refused to leave their posts, forever and always, until the last truck stopped rolling and the final ghost found rest. But that night was far in the future. Tonight there was only the road, the darkness, and the eternal convoy rolling on.